good old Rob to talk us through all this. Two, hello. Two. Check two. Hello. Hello, chat. It's nice to see ya. It's nice to see you. And John, thanks for the 40 months. Resub at tier 2 and for all the support. John, it's nice to see you again. I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy that you're all here. Hello, chat. We're back. We're back. I think we're back to the regular schedule. The regular schedule. Our long summer nightmare is finally over. It wasn't really a summer nightmare, was it? The summer hours, though, I think are officially coming to an end. I had a lovely summer for the most part. Some parts not so lovely, but mostly very, very lovely. Welcome on in, Rob. Hello, one who reads. I'm here before you this time. Yeah, it's a day that I've been, I don't want to say dreading, but I've been feeling kind of ambivalent about for a while. You know, it was my son's first day of school today, first day of grade 3. And I've talked a little bit about that whole situation, and it's a big change. He's in a new school, new environment. It's a big change for him. It's a big change for me. It's a little more commuting, a little less convenient than the previous situation. So, like, you know, it's exciting. I'm excited for him. I think it's going to be a good year. I think it's a really good situation for him, but it's also just like anytime there's big changes going on, it's just a little scary, you know? I think probably I'm more scared than he is. It's all right, John. It's all right, John. I'm happy that you're here. You know, we spent a lot of time together this summer. He was here at my place quite a lot. We spent a lot of time together. We went to Brockville and spent time there. We did a lot of cool stuff together this summer. He was just at camp the last couple of weeks, which is like right around the corner from my apartment. So he's been here a lot. He's been with me a lot. It was really nice, honestly. It was really, really nice. And now, like, I'm feeling a little bit, it's not empty nest syndrome because it's not empty. Like, he's coming back and he's with me quite a lot still moving forward. But it is a little bit difficult for me to go from this, like, several month long period when we're, like, together all the time and always doing stuff. And I always just, when you have a kid around, you know, it's just you have that presence there and you get kind of used to it. And, you know, then when it's not there, it's like I'm looking around, I'm in my apartment and it's like quiet and it's just kind of, it's a little weird. It's a little weird and doesn't always feel that great. Hey, Dimitri, how's it going? Hey, Dick Pendarren, what's up? So it's just, this whole thing's going to take some getting used to. For him, probably more for me than for him. But it's going to take me a little bit of time to adjust. I am looking forward to being able to get back to, like, doing this show regularly. It's been really, really difficult this summer having, like, a regular schedule, which when you're a Twitch streamer as your, like, job is not really advisable. It's not really that great to be never, you know, not having any kind of regularity and not really being able to do it. Get used to that feeling when that becomes mostly permanent. It means they actually have a life. Yeah. God, I'm not even imagining that. I mean, this is the thing. He's 8, you know, and I'm looking forward to seeing him, you know, grow up and get older, but I'm also dreading it at the same time. You know, I got a couple more years here, like really just a very few years of him being like a sweet little guy, and he's going to be a preteen and a teenager and all this shit. And, like, you know, that's great. I don't think he's going to be surly or anything. Like, we have a really close relationship. Like, we're really close, and I don't think that's ever really going to change. But it's still going to be different. You know, it's different having, like, a sweet little guy versus, like, a kid that's, like, 12, 13. It's just a totally different dynamic. Or 15, 16, 17. It's a very, very different dynamic. I'm a little bit freaking out about it, but it's also like cross that bridge when I come to it kind of thing. This is like this is an issue for a few years from now. Do have a little bit more time of him being a little guy. So just really trying to maximize those last couple of years and make sure that we're spending as much time together as we can, and make sure he's happy and feels safe and supported and comfortable, all that stuff. Can you not be a chimney sweep in the traditional style? Yeah, I'm going to teach him to say, "Oi, governor." He's going to start using slang you've never heard. He's already saying cappin'. I don't even know where he heard it from. Probably some awful YouTuber. He keeps describing things as cappin', being cappin'. And I'm just like, oh gosh. Are you cappin', Dad? And he's saying that stuff to me now. Nightmare. He's accusing me of capping. To be fair, you are totally capping. It's true. Sometimes I am. That's what really gets me. That's what really gets me. He does have a point. He does raise a good point. Cap'n Lou Albano. That's good. The surefire way to ruin it, right? Use it yourself. Yeah, I'm just going to start describing things as being skibbity and all that stuff. We know the lingo here, chat. We know the Zoomer lingma. I was about to say lingo, and then I read the word sigma on the stream, like on the chat from Joe, and it made me say ligma. See, but that's also the slang, though. That's also the slang. So really, that's an example of what I was talking about. Let's move on. Let's move on from that. What's ligma? You don't even want to know, man. Sees right through your non-capping persona. Is the kid's got Riz? He does have Riz. He does have Riz. Old Dutch, I'm going to get to your T2 take in a minute. I'm just talking about my personal situation here. Don't believe me. I registered your T2 take. Is capping good or bad? It's like you're lying. You're capping. That's cap. That's a lie. I don't even know if he knows what it means. He just likes to say it. What a load of cap. No, that's not. I mean, you could say that, but you sound like 50 years old when you say it like that. Anyway, it's just like, new year, big changes coming up. I can't help but be a little anxious about it. I am 53 years old, so that's good. Okay, well, I guess it makes sense. Excuse me, sir, but I believe that's cap. Teach him Malak. Is that a Greek thing, Dimitri? Because I hear the guys at my local diner saying Malaka a lot. Is that a Greek thing? I could start incorporating that. It means motherfucker. Okay, there we go. Idiot, motherfucker.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Objection, Your Honor. The defendant is capping. He's got no Riz.
Joe, thank you for the 200 bits. Anybody else notice that every time Rob's away parenting, coup attempts occur? Venezuela first, now France. Well, the thing about France is that it's not a coup. That doesn't count as a coup. No, that's simply the neoliberal head of state exercising his power over the political process. Totally legitimate. Totally legitimate. Very different. When that happens in like Latin America or Asia, it's one thing, but when it happens in France, it's actually totally fine to do. It's totally okay. How is it not a coup? A coup is literally a French word. Oh, that's true, yeah. Ignoring people's voices. And then Maduro, yeah. Although the whole ignoring the people's voices thing doesn't make a lot of sense when these opposition parties in Venezuela are trying to put together like protests and no one's showing up to them. You'd think if people's voices were being ignored, maybe more of those folks would be showing up for those things. Can I start a controversial conversation? Just spoke to a Venezuelan dryball finisher. He's very soured on the PSUV. Agreed when I said sanctions. He didn't give me any dirty looks when I said yo soy comunista. Bad Empanada made a video about how he's had similar experiences with all the Venezuela immigrants he's met in Argentina. Their immigration rate is 25% over a decade, while Cuba, with harsher restrictions, had 10% over 65 years. When you said sanctions didn't help. I mean, I think that's a conversation that we could have. I think it's just the sanctions part is inescapable, and the effect that that's had on the economy very deliberately. There's also the fact that I think mass emigration from Venezuela is more possible and a lot less difficult. Not that it is easy, but it is less difficult than I think from an island nation. I mean, there's all kind of like you could put together criticisms of like any official enemy country, or like any criticisms of like the Maduro regime, or like we could talk about whatever other place, you know, like Bolivia or Nicaragua or DPRK or whatever, you know. But it's just like you can't. The Western imperialism is always going to be the primary contradiction, you know. So we can't really have real conversations about it. As long as that's going on, as long as there's crippling sanctions and blockades intentionally destabilizing these places, we can't really have a conversation about it. It doesn't mean that these places are infallible, or these governments or these leaders are perfect, or that everything's great. I mean, that's never what it's about whenever we talk about these things. It's just we can't really have a conversation about any of these deficiencies without acknowledging the elephant in the room, which is the elephant of Western imperialism intentionally destroying and destabilizing these places. Yeah, the Bank of England literally stole their gold and tried to give it to Guaido. You know, like always, it's not a blanket, uncritical defense of any of these places or leaders. It's just acknowledging that we can't really have a real, genuine conversation about any of these places as long as Western imperialism is exerting its influence on them in this way. I went to Montana's for lunch yesterday because I was hankering for some antojitos, and this guy at the bar was day drinking and telling the bartender about how Kamala Harris is communist. Donald Trump would be bad for oil prices because he supports fracking, but Kamala is a communist, so I hope he wins. Have you heard of Mao? Actual quote. It would be so sick if Kamala Harris was a closet Maoist. Boy, would there be egg on our faces. Imagine that. I would be the first to apologize. I was not familiar with your game. You know, I would be the first to be like, okay, I totally misread this. I totally misread that Kamala Harris is a closet Maoist that's going to put reactionaries in re-education camps and nationalize all these important services and put landlords on public show trials, you know? I would be the first one to say, like, I was totally wrong about this. I don't think that's the case, though. Her father is a Marxist, yeah. She's part of a long, proud tradition of neoliberal Marxist failed daughters and sons. Like the super secret long game. I mean, I guess if you are a Maoist in the United States government, you can't exactly be open about it, you know? Lisa Nandy, an extremely dull centrist labor politician here, is also the daughter of a Marxist academic. And of course Justin Trudeau is the son of a very famous Marxist as well. I mean, there's numerous examples of this. And Pete Buttigieg as well. Yeah, 2 neoliberal children of Marxists in the Democratic Party. That we know about. Let's be real, Maoists can't keep their mouths shut. That is true, yeah. Ed and David Miliband, extremely dull centrist labor politicians here, are also the sons of a very famous Marxist academic. Yeah, it seems to be a really common thing. Old Dutch, I want to get to your take here, okay? I have a hot T2 score take, Rob. First and foremost, the percussive elements fuck. The orchestral stuff is kind of mid. I think what I like about the T2 score, Old Dutch, is that like there's iconic parts of the theme, of course, iconic in the opening credits, and of course the famous like "You must lower me into the steel," that whole part. I don't know, like I think in the action scenes, it's pretty great. Like I'm thinking of all the big action scenes. I think what's good about the T2 score is it kind of stays out of the way a little bit. There's not this big like, it's not like a big like John Williams thing where it's like it announces itself. It's really kind of in the background. It's very complementary to the action. And it comes when you need to have the score come through for these big emotional beats, then it's there. And I think it a little bit stays out of the way. It's a little bit more in the background. It doesn't insist upon itself. It's definitely not over the top. I think it works. I really like it. Yeah, of course, Old Dutch. That's the iconic part. Yeah. We all know the dun 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 part. Like we're all familiar. Joe, have you seriously not seen T2? Are you trolling? Are you capping? Are you capping right now? Dick Pendera never seen T2. Jesus Christ, people. Oh my gosh. Folks. Oh boy. I'm going to do that, but you really got to see T2. It's one of the greatest films ever made. I'm stupid and I submit to your argument. Maybe debates do work. You're not stupid at all. I think it's totally valid. I think you have a totally valid viewpoint on this. And I respect your opinion, Old Dutch. It's almost as good as T1. I love T1. And I could easily entertain the argument that T1 is better. It's leaner, it's more independent, it's scarier. It's kind of a little bit of a different genre. James Cameron really did take the sequel and turn it into really like this blockbuster action movie with like global mass appeal that I don't think is really present in T1. But T1 is it's so propulsive. It's really fantastic, honestly. Like I think you could make a strong argument that it is the superior film. When did we start calling train spotting T1 and T2? Again, we're not talking about train spotting. We're talking about the Terminator films. It's funny how Aliens, and T1, T2 have basically the same meta. It's true. I mean, that's James Cameron. He's just two of the very best sequels of all time, and has a very similar dynamic in both of them. Taking something that exists in one genre and taking the things that are good about it and then expanding on it and expanding the appeal of it and expanding the genre. Only Alien is still the superior film. I kind of agree, honestly. Like, Alien is basically a perfect film. I think I love Aliens maybe more, Lucid. Hello, Lucid, by the way. I think because of like the childhood connection I have to it, I think Aliens is pretty perfect as well. But Alien is like, it's impeccable. There's not one flaw or deficiency in it at all. James Cameron could make a sequel to Titanic, and we all know it would be amazing. He probably could. And the next one's an action-packed thrill ride. Alien does suffer from a lack of Paxton, but Aliens has a lack of Tom Skerritt and Veronica Cartwright and William Hurt and Ian Holm, though. And Yaphet Kotto. And Bret Easton Ellis. No, wait, that's not his name. That's the author. Harry Dean Stanton. Excuse me, I'm thinking about the author. Bret Easton Ellis was the author of American Psycho. Right? I'm getting confused. Michael Biehn as well. We're just naming actors. John Hurt. Okay, Carnova, stop calling me out here, okay? Okay? Now we're just naming guys. I'm embarrassing myself. I'm supposed to be a super fan of this franchise. Chevy Chase, he's a guy. Let's just start naming some guys. Biehn the GOAT. I mean, Michael Biehn, yeah. I mean, he was the man for his time and place. If we're talking the perfect horror with the who's who of actors, John Carpenter got it in one with The Thing. Another perfect movie. And Legends of the Fall. Now we're just naming stuff. Yeah, The Thing is another film that I watched pretty recently, and it's just that was one that, like, as much as I watched these movies when I was younger, for some reason just never got around to watching until I was in my 20s. And I just remember the first scene with the dog in the dog kennel in The Thing. As soon as that happened, I was just like, well, this is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. It's just like, you know, what do you even say about it? It's just like, oh my gosh. The tracking shot with the helicopter. Well, I mean, that's all great as well, the whole setup. I'm talking about, like, in the kennel, when there's the first kind of, like, thing situation. And I was just watching it, just being like, okay. You know? I saw funny, I think it was like one of those Letterboxd reviews. I don't really like the memey Letterboxd reviews where people are just like trying to go viral with their little like quips or whatever, but I did see one about The Thing where it's just like going into the movie, you're like, why is it called that? You know, why could it be called something else? And then you see the creature in the movie and you're like, that really was just a thing, wasn't it? It really was. It's like when Barney has his first sip of beer. Seriously, it is like that. It is exactly like that. It truly was The Thing. It really, really was. Now we're back on Movie Corner, I guess. What else do we have on Movie Corner? Okay, so I mentioned the other day that I watched the original Mission Impossible, the Brian De Palma one, which still just it holds up so well. My favorite is when Kurt Russell Hawk Tua's on that thing. Oh boy, I'm sure there's some kind of like literature that's been written about that exact subject, but not that I really want to explore that. But I started last night Mission Impossible 2, which I have not seen since the 90s. And I remember not really liking it in the 90s, but I was like, I've seen some like revisionist stuff about Mission Impossible 2. You got John Woo, Tom Cruise, big action blockbuster. You know? Maybe it's better than I remember. And I started watching it last night, and it's really borderline unwatchable. It really is. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like it should be good. You say on paper, you put that on paper, John Woo, and like in fucking 1998 or 1999, whatever it is. and Tom Cruise and this big budget, big franchise. It should work. And I was having a hard time even getting through it, which is really rare for me. Three is much better, yeah. I am going to try and finish watching it. I'll probably try and finish watching it tonight. It just looks cheap. It's like the most 90s thing ever. Like everything about it, the score, like Tom Cruise's performance in it. Tom Cruise is a fantastic actor, and he's really good in that role. And it's just like everything about it is just so off. It just seems like a parody. It's really bad. And there's that scene with Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins shows up. He's like the point man. It's painfully 1999 in the bad way. Yeah, he gets the sunglasses. He's just doing his like free climbing little vacation. And he gets the exploding cool sunglasses. And there's that scene with Anthony Hopkins where it says, this isn't mission difficult, Mr. Hunt. It's mission impossible. And I was just like, Can I say Austin Powers 2 really had MI2's number in the intro? I would have to see that again. I remember there was a very funny Ben Stiller thing at like the MTV Awards when Ben Stiller was like pretending he was like Tom Cruise's stuntman. I think that was like probably the highlight of that film. Sir Anthony does Office Jim face to camera. Need the cinema emote for moments like this. It was really not good. It's really, and I was going into it with an open mind. Mission District Impossible. Charles Dance in Last Action Hero, underrated villain. Charles Dance is just great no matter what he shows up in. Alien 3, going back to the Alien films, like clearly not really on the level of the first two films, but like still a lot to like about Alien 3, including Charles Dance shows up and once again is just fantastic. He shows up and he's fucking great. And he instantly elevates like anything that he's doing. I've only seen 3 once. I've talked about it in the theater before. I've talked about Alien 3 before, my experience with that, because I loved those films so much, and I went and, with my dad and my friend, snuck into Alien 3 in the movie theater in 1992, and got really fucked up by it, because all my favorite characters from the previous film are killed in the opening 5 minutes of the movie, which is, you know, in the days before like spoilers and the internet and all that stuff, was very surprising to me as like a 9-10-year-old kid seeing this movie. And then you have within 15 minutes you've got the gruesome autopsy scene of Newt from the previous film, and I was like, oh man, I had a feeling like I should not be watching this. Good thing they got away. Anyway, they just immediately died after. Yeah. Sorry for spoiling this 30-year-old movie. I'm sorry. Lucid's insisting we watch this clip from Austin Powers 3. My version of that is Steven Seagal dying in the first 10 minutes of Executive Decision. That Executive Decision is really good, though. Executive Decision is really good, and it's not the first 10 minutes, but it's like in the opening of this mission that they're on. Executive Decision is really good, and what a great cast that has as well. Oh man, Joe Morton is in that. Talk about Terminator 2. Oliver Platt, Seagal, Kurt Russell, John Leguizamo. I haven't seen. How do I remember this? I haven't seen this in like 20 years. Executive Decision is really good. This is how Dick Penderin shows up to the chat.
Yeah, baby.
This has got a sense of humor about himself.
Hi, I'm Dixie. Dixie Normus. I may just be a small-town FBI agent slash single mother, but I'm still tough and sexy.
Well, Miss Normus, shall we shag now or shag later?
Oh, Austin, behave.
Hey, Powers. You better watch your friggin' self because this
shit.
is one doctor who does make
Always jarring to see that guy show up. That's always a little jarring. Okay, I'll finish this. I really have not. I don't remember anything about
right,
this.
Mini-Me?
Hey, assholes! I'm right over here! A mini-me! Come and get me!
And cut.
That's a cut, everybody! Moving on, check the gate, please.
So, Austin, what'd you think of the opening credits?
Well, I can't believe Sir Steven Spielberg, the grooviest filmmaker in the history
I watched
of
LA
cinema,
Confidential the
is
other day, and
making
both
a
of those lads are in
movie
it.
about my life.
LA Confidential is very good. There's just no getting around that.
Having said that, I do have some thoughts.
Really? My friend here thinks it's fine the way it is.
Well, no offense, Sir Stevie, but you gotta have mojo, baby. Yeah! Hit it!
Very nice. The main funny thing about Mission Impossible 2 is the number of mask reveals there are. You know, the famous thing in Mission Impossible, it's like you pull off the mask, you do the mask reveal. There's like 5 different one of those scenes in Mission Impossible 2. I was just really chuckling at this though last night.
I don't think I can get her to do it.
You mean it'll be difficult?
Very.
Well, this is not mission difficult, Mr. Hunt. It's mission impossible. Difficult should be a walk in the park for you.
Hey, Orb Lady, we're not perverts, okay? We're just having a little movie chit-chat, that's all. Don't call us perverts, please. It's not, if it's perverted to sit around and watch clips of Austin Powers 3 and Mission Impossible 2, well then, guilty as charged, okay? Oh, it's somehow perverted to do dick and boob jokes and to sit here on this channel talking about jacking off all day. Oh, that's perverted now, according to Orb Lady. Very interesting. Rob's the most depressed. Exactly. It's only because of wokeness now that this is where we're at. This is where we're at now. What a pervert pause all the scenes with bare feet in Avatar. Okay, even I have my limits. Okay, even I have my limits. Always with the gooning. That's right. It is always with the gooning. Specifically, Anthony Hopkins saying that line is kind of perverted. Port Talbot, home of Anthony Hopkins, Richard Burton, and Michael Sheen, the big three of Welsh acting. Richard Burton, what a cool dude that guy was. And if he ever did anything that was like really bad, then don't pay attention to what I just said. But whenever you see him like do interviews or conversations about acting, it's always just like, man, Richard Burton. Rob's Goon Cave is lined with TVs playing the 2 Avatar movies. I mean, we don't need to get into what's going on in the Goon Cave. I mean, it's not really important. Let's move on from that, actually. Let's not get into that. Sheen in Twilight chewing scenery. That's what's really fun about Twilight. I had never watched those movies. We ended up watching a lot of them in the Discord server. And like, it's fun when someone like Michael Sheen shows up in one of those movies and knows exactly what it is and is not like, oh, I'm embarrassed to be a part of this or whatever, and knows what it is and is just like having fun with it. That's fantastic. Seeing someone of that caliber, that quality. Blurp Blurp, thanks for gifting a sub to our friend Orb Lady. Thank you, Blurp Blurp. I know Orb Lady and Lucid just moved. I hope the move went okay. I've been seeing some of the pics. Hate moving. It sucks. It's awful to move, and I hope that you both are settling in. Sheen also did those Underworld flicks. I never watched those. I did watch the original, I think, in the theater. I'm pretty sure I fell asleep in the theater watching the original Underworld. We are much closer to our handler in Quantico. Oh, that's nice. It's the commute, right? You don't have to deal with that. I watched all of them, so you don't have to. So many Underworld movies. A sub, aka the pervert's badge for Orb Lady. That's what they do call it. Yeah. That's what they call it. Well, this is fun, right, Chad? We're back. We're hitting the ground running here. Approaching season. What season is this? I've lost track. Are we on season 4 right now, or are we going into season 4 of TRRS? I actually can't even really remember anymore. It's something like that, though. Are we going into season 5? Could that be possible? Someone needs to remind me about this. One of the old heads. Didn't 4 just end last year? Okay, so we're headed into season 5. I think November 1st.
This is some
that
guy,
would be season
Rob
5.
Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Benny, hello. Thank you for the raid, Benny. I appreciate it. Benny and the Dolls raiding in. Welcome in, Raiders. Thank you for joining. It's me, Rob. It's nice to see you. Thanks again, Benny. I hope the Benny stream went well today. It's me, Rob. Hello. Thank you for joining us. We're not really We're getting to the important stuff eventually, okay? What have we been talking about so far? Not a lot. I talked about some of my personal stuff that I got going on. It's my kid's first day of school. I'm a little anxious about that. He's at a new school this year. And the dolls. Very good stream. Got to run now and rest a bit. Hope your stream goes well. Thank you, Benny. I appreciate it a lot. And what else we were talking about? Mission Impossible 2 and Austin Powers for some reason. Of course, jacking off came up as well. So really just covering all the bases. We're covering all the bases here. Really just hitting the ground running, like I was saying. Squibs. A brief mention of France and Venezuela, but then it's like, no, we got to move away from this. This is getting too serious. It's getting way too serious here. Favorite Welsh actors? Yeah. Do you think they will mess up the frozen yogurt again at this new school? I hope not. Because that was very upsetting for everybody. That was very upsetting for everyone. I think I'm going to have to get a car. I've been trying to avoid getting a car. I talked a little bit about this. I've been trying to use this community car service in Montreal that we have, and for the summer it's been okay, but now I'm thinking about logistically how that's going to work this year, and it's like I'm not going to be able to do this. So I think that's something I'm kind of looking into trying to figure out now. I really wanted to avoid it, but yeah, I just got it with the commute that I have to do with my kid, bringing him to school and back and forth to his mom's and everything. It's just not going to work. Yeah, I was using the car share app, Kijiji, and it's been really good, honestly. It's a really cool service. It's been really good for this summer, but commuting a couple times per week, though, is going to be not very convenient and will probably end up costing the same amount as a car payment and the associated costs of having a car in the first place. So get a used Honda Insight there, Rad. I think I'm in the market for a Civic. I think I'm going to get a Honda Civic. Look at that. Anon, thank you for the $15.
Previously on TRRS.
Thank you very much, Anon, for the $15. I really appreciate that. Can you bike? I can't bike back and forth to his school. No, it's too far. I can bike around the city. There's plenty of ways to get around the city, but having to bring my kid back and forth over the bridge and everything is just not going to be doable. Honda Fits are really cool cars. Yeah, I'm leaning towards that. I've got a Mazda CX-5, very dad car, solid. I'm going to see what's out there. I'm going to see what's possible. You should be in the market for a Bugatti Utopia. Yeah, definitely shopping used. I'm not making new car money quite yet. Maybe one of these days, but no, that's not. I'm not living that. I'm not living that kind of lifestyle quite yet. But yes, if you do want to help support the work that I do here on Twitch, Anon just gifted $15, which was very kind, and I appreciate that a lot. If you do want to send me a tip, you can do so by using the link in the chat. If you like this program and this community, and you like tuning in to hear me talk about all these variety of different subjects, please send a tip. Those are very helpful. Or subscribe and help me make this little number at the bottom of the screen go up, which I must do every single day. As long as I'm part of this Twitch content hamster wheel, I've got to make this little number at the bottom of the screen go up. So if you can, please do subscribe or gift subs, or send me a tip, which is very, very helpful and very valuable to me. Like I've been saying a couple times, I had to take a lot of time off this summer from doing this show for parenting reasons, and I was happy to do it. I had a really nice summer spending time with my son. I was no real complaints about that, but the reality is I need to kind of get things going again and get back to where I was. So if you can, please support this show by subscribing or sending a tip. There's other ways you can support the work that I do as well. It's all very, very much appreciated. And it's the only way that I'm able to keep doing this show. Have you thought about leasing? I've considered it, yeah. I've thought about it. I really just don't know what the best option is. I'm not a car guy. This is the issue. I'm not a car guy. I would probably like to avoid having a car. I really kind of tried to see if I could do that, precisely because I'm not a car guy and I don't know what the fuck's going on with cars. I don't know how they work. I don't know how to fix them. I don't know how to take care of them. I don't know how much they cost. I really don't. I really don't know any of that stuff. But I think even just today, getting my community car and going out to the South Shore and, taking my kid to school, I was just like, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. So we're going to see. We're going to see how that works. Get a nice sedan, Civic, Mazda 3, Corolla. Yeah. We're going to look into this. I'm hopefully going to make this happen over the next couple of weeks, kind of ASAP kind of thing. So I will keep you all posted on that. Get a lifted truck with truck nuts. I'm going to be rolling coal. All over the place. All the Joe, I would be happy to get a souped up Civic, but I'm not. This is not my lifestyle yet, though. I'm not souping anything up. Okay, there's going to be no souping. There's going to be no souping over here. Coal roller Corolla. That's right. Yeah. Civic with ground FX and turbo. Yeah, there we go. Depressing there aren't more affordable EVs or hybrids. Yeah, and it would be nice to get like a cheap EV being produced in China. Unfortunately, Trudeau just slapped 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs, so that's not going to be available for the foreseeable future. Even though that's our only kind of like energy efficient infrastructure that we're relying on at all. We have no high-speed rail. We don't have shit except EVs, but we can't get cheap Chinese EVs because America said we're not allowed to. So leasing is not the strategy if you can't afford new. It's to soak rich guys who don't want the same car year round. Yeah, I don't really know, honestly. I don't really know how it's going to work. I will probably just get a used Honda Civic or something like that. But surely there are cheap Canadian EVs as an alternative. Also, no. Also, no. I mean, you can, obviously, you can get somewhat affordable EVs, but not really. I don't think there's much of a used market for that. Can you get one of these bad boys? Oh, there we go. That'd be sick, pulling up to school in one of these guys. Hell yeah. There's also a huge lack of EV infrastructure, definitely. Like I'm in Montreal, it's pretty decent. I do live near like a number of places where you can charge an EV if you have one, but it's certainly not like throughout the country. I agree with Cowed Malama. Leasing is the worst option. Okay, well, I will keep that in mind. Get in the back, losers. We're going to overthrow the US-led global hegemony. Absolutely. We absolutely are. Oh, getting a car. Really wanted to try and avoid that, but it's just not. Today, I think I've been having this realization setting in for the last couple of weeks, and then today especially. I'm like driving across the bridge in my community car, and I was just like, I gotta get a fucking car. This is not gonna work. This is not gonna work. So Canada can't get Chinese cars either? No, Trudeau just announced that they're slapping tariffs on those.
But we begin this morning with breaking news out of Halifax. A few moments
Trudeau.
ago, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced Canada would be imposing a tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles, as well as on Chinese aluminum and steel. Trudeau also announced his government will be taking steps to reduce the number of temporary foreign workers coming into the country. The Prime Minister made those announcements at the federal cabinet retreat in Halifax, and Ashley Burke was there and listening in. Ashley, let's begin with the announcement on temporary foreign workers. What did the Prime Minister have to say?
Well, Chris, the Prime Minister unveiled that there are going to be changes to the temporary foreign workers plan. This after the government's been grappling with this explosion of immigration numbers after the pandemic. They saw the numbers double for non-permanent residents between 2021 to the second quarter of this year to 2.8 million people. And that's according to Statistics Canada. Here's what the Prime Minister said is going to be changing.
Surely this will appease the Conservatives.
Of reducing
They'll all stop talking about this stuff now.
Low-paid temporary foreign workers that can come work in this country.
The whole sad thing about the whole temporary foreign workers thing is that, like, as much as they've been used as a political issue, and all these like racist psychos are pointing to our temporary foreign workers as like the cause of like our fucking country's decline, when they're the ones being exploited. It's not us being exploited. It's not some asshole in his like gated community in Alberta being exploited by temporary foreign workers. They're the ones being exploited. And then, of course, they become the scapegoats for everything wrong in our country. It's so pathetic.
Part of the response over the next 90 days, we'll be looking at the higher wage streams of temporary workers, and we'll be looking at unemployment rates and opportunities to make further adjustments over the course of this fall as we come forward with comprehensive level plans that'll respond to the reality that Canada's facing now and in years and decades to come.
All right, Ashley, so more changes could be coming to the immigration
100%
system
surtax on Chinese EVs.
Also made a
like it's insane to be like, this is our climate change solution. You know, no high-speed rail, no real just transition away from fossil fuels, no significant investment into like solar or wind or any of these like sustainable energy systems. All EVs. That's what we're doing. We're doing EVs. And then like saying like, okay, well, can I get a cheap EV, a high quality cheap EV being made in China? And they literally say, no, you cannot. Like, it is so fucking insane. It's so stupid. No, Tesla only. Well, the joke's on you. The Conservative Party just announced they're disbanding. Well, they should, because they won and they get everything that they want. If these fucking guys were smart, they would just vote for Trudeau, who gives them everything that they want. But they can't wrap their minds around that idea. They think this man's some kind of Marxist. Please buy EV. No pay, only buy. It's so stupid. Honestly, what a stupid country. And it's all because America told us we're not allowed to. And the aluminum and steel is going to be more impactful for most people. Yeah, and of course this will not harm China in any way. Like that's how that gets sold, right? This is how we prevent them from from becoming this like kind of like global economic powerhouse, when it will not affect them at all. It only affects people in this country. I know they already are. That's the whole thing. It's like that nothing that we're going to do with tariffs or any of this stuff is going to have any impact in that. Yeah, they are the largest car market, and it's actually incredible the way they've gone from being like a completely insignificant player in that market to completely dominating that market in an extremely short span of time. It's objectively like an incredible accomplishment. So nothing that we're doing is going to have any impact in that. Oh yeah, if American told you to jump off a bridge, would Canada do it? Yes, actually. Yes. We would jump off a bridge. What are you talking about, Rob? The Canadian market is the linchpin of the Chinese EV sector. As always, with all our accusations and all our provocations toward China, accusing them of interfering in our political system, slapping on tariffs, whatever it is. It's always going to be the same reaction from them. We don't think about you at all. We don't give a shit. Anyway, it's just so stupid. Let me just finish the rest of this thing. I'll move on.
Significant announcement on tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. Walk us through the details on that part of the announcement this morning.
What is even the reasoning for
that
it?
there will be 100.
Like, has even like I guess they're going to get into it. I didn't even look at this though. Like, what is the actual reason? Like, why are we doing this? Why are we putting 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs? Like, what's the actual reason? I genuinely don't understand why we're doing this. Economic protectionism. I thought this was supposed to be how the fucking free market works. I thought that's the whole point of the free market. That these people jack off about all day. You know? If you want to compete with these cheap EVs, lower your prices. Like, what do you want? That's the market. And we don't produce them. That's another thing, Joe. What are we protecting? Where's our big domestic nationalized EV sector? If that was something that existed, it would be like, okay, well, I can kind of understand this. You know, if we have some kind of big national industry where we're producing this product and we're trying to protect that, okay, like, let's talk about that. That does not exist, though. That does not exist. We don't have that. Yeah, if we built a national EV industry along with the infrastructure, maybe protectionism could make sense. That's not happening anytime soon. They're protecting the profits of global car manufacturers that bribe them. If you import EVs from China, Canada will instantly become the Communist Party of Canada. It's too scary to comprehend. We are going to have our Huawei phones and our BYD electric vehicles. And all of that information that we're using on our phones and vehicles, it goes right to Xi Jinping's house every night. He gets a report of every single person in Canada, knows exactly what we're doing. He's highly invested in this. He really cares what, like, fucking Joe Smith in Brampton, Ontario is up to. And as I've said many times, I want President Xi to know my information. I want him to have that information. I'm not only am I not concerned about it, I want him to have that information. So he knows that I'm not one of these like dog-brained imperialist dipshits. You reminded me of the whole Huawei exec thing. What an embarrassing country. We lock up a Huawei executive, again, because the United States told us to. We lock up a Huawei executive, and they're like, okay, well, we're taking 2 of your spies then. And then we're like, what? You can't do that. You can't take our spies. And they're like, no, we did. And then we have this big national pants-pissing freak out about it. Our beautiful boys. You took our beautiful Michaels. So silly. What a silly country. It honestly is just so silly. So on top of not getting cheap EV, we also paid to have companies come here to build batteries. Yeah, and that's a big part of the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States as well. How are those EV battery factories coming along, by the way, in Joe Brandon's Inflation Reduction Act? Reindustrializing all these red state areas. How's that coming along so far? Are the factories up and running and churning out solar panels and EV batteries? I don't think so quite yet, are they? Let's really think about this. How much Chinese EVs would cost is normally like a tenth of what a car costs now anyway. So really it's just a 100% increase is just making Chinese cars cost as much as Western ones. Yeah. The whole thing is just really stupid. They got to get reelected before those factories get running. Exactly. That's why it's the most important election. One of them got a mayor to lose the next election. People freaked the fuck out of the prospect. They freaked the fuck out of the possibility of like factories coming back to America, because some of these factories had affiliations with China, because you can't be in the EV battery or the solar panel business anywhere around the world without being in business with China. So all these fucking people that are like, the Democrats took our jobs away, even when the Democrats are like, well, okay, we're going to give tax breaks to these corporations to build factories there. And the same people are like, no, how are you doing this? Great. No, everything's just going really great. I'm going to keep putting this on here.
100% tariff on all Chinese-made EVs or heavily subsidized ones, and as well a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum coming from China. Now, this is a change that's in line with the U.S. that moved forward with these tariff hikes
in line with the
in
U.S.
May, and since then there have been calls from the industry, Ontario's premier, and experts to move forward and do the same thing. Last night there was a surprise visit for one of U.S. President Joe Biden's top advisors, Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor. He came here and he spoke. Well, this is one of the things that he spoke to them about, and he said it's not just a case where it's an economic concern. He says there isn't a level playing field because so many subsidies are going into these Chinese-made EVs. But he also said and urged Canada that this is a security threat. Take a listen to what he said.
Oh, it's a security threat.
The
Okay.
European Union has taken action on this front, and the G7 has spoken broadly about this set of issues.
So we got a speech in Halifax from Jake Sullivan, the U.S. National Security Advisor.
Capacity and about the national security challenges associated with certain kinds of supply chain issues,
telling us what's
trade
what.
Issues. And Canada will make its own determinations, but the U.S. does believe that
we'll make its own. I'm sure we'll make our own
coordinated
determinations.
approach on these issues benefits all of us.
The government is moving forward on a number of these tariffs, matching them with the U.S., but not with semiconductors and solar cells, which is still doing consultations on.
And Ashley, looming large at this retreat, of course, is the infighting within the Liberal Party. The Prime Minister being asked there by reporters a number of times about all of this infighting. He was clear he wanted to stay on, but tell us more about what stuck out to you from how the Prime Minister framed him staying in that role, despite all of the consternation that's coming from within his own party.
The Prime Minister faced questions about if he's taken any lessons from what's unfolded in the U.S., where the Democrats changed their leader when Joe Biden said he wasn't going to run for re-election, and Kamala Harris stepped in. They've seen a bump in the polls, a newly energized campaign, but when asked if Trudeau's taken from any lessons from that, still no signs that he plans to do something similar. He wants to stay on for this next election. He said that he's running on his agenda and what he's done over the past 9 years. And this comes at a time when the party is facing, and Justin Trudeau himself, some of the lowest polling that they have seen since he became leader. And
There are a
also,
few
they lost a
BYDs in my
by-election
neighborhood,
in
and they're real
Toronto,
nice.
St.
This is just a
Paul's
shame. They're
earlier
so cool, honestly. Like, they're so cool.
this summer, and that caused members of caucus to come out and say that they want to see big changes, and they haven't seen that yet in the last several months, and they want it to come out of cabinet. Some say they want a cabinet shuffle, others say they want some sort of signs of contrition from the Prime Minister to say what's gone wrong and to do a course correction. They want a major reset coming out of this, but there are no signs at this point that that's what's going to happen here in Halifax.
All right, a lot to keep your eye on. Ashley, thank you very much for all of this from Halifax.
So there we go. There we go. That's what's happening. Canada looking into possible security threat of Chinese EVs. That's the next one. I don't know. Should we look at this whole thing?
Canada is about to slap some big tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles.
It's going to get further into the security issues.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau revealed the plans at the federal cabinet retreat in Halifax.
Actors like China have chosen to give themselves an unfair advantage in the global marketplace,
it's unfair.
Compromising the security of our critical industries and displacing dedicated Canadian autos and metal workers. So we're taking action to address that.
Effective October 1st, Ottawa will be imposing a 100% surtax on all Chinese-made EVs. And 2 weeks
Can
later,
you imagine capitalism being unfair? It's
surtax on
unthinkable.
imports of steel and aluminum products from China that will come into effect.
Also, the whole thing about they're so heavily subsidized. Like, let's not talk about our fucking entire oil industry in the first place. We subsidize our auto companies and metal industry, but it's unfair that the Chinese did it. Exactly. Chosen to give, you fucking idiots gave it all to them with NAFTA and so on. What is this? The consequences of my own actions? You know, this is what neoliberalism was. This was the whole idea of neoliberalism, is that we deindustrialize, we send those jobs and factories elsewhere to China and elsewhere around the world, and we get cheap products in return. That was the entire fucking deal that we were making with the whole neoliberal economy. That was it. We get a bunch of cheap stuff being made in China and elsewhere, and we don't have those kind of industries anymore. And then when the stuff starts happening, it's just like, this doesn't seem fair. This is not fair. It's so stupid. It is so stupid. Neoliberals sowing, hell yeah, this rules. Neoliberals reaping. What the fuck? It's literally exactly that. That was the exact deal. That was how that was like promoted to people and to consumers and to people around the Western world.
These hefty taxes likely won't go without retaliation.
Not like
China.
that, though.
Certainly, that is the big question. Ottawa says it's preparing for just that.
Canada needs to be ready for all manner of reactions, and we are.
But wait a minute, though. We were making this deal, but China wasn't supposed to become an economic powerhouse. They were supposed to be our subservient comprador nation that was just making our stuff and quietly going along with whatever we told them. This was not part of the deal. Them using this to build these productive forces, and becoming this global economic powerhouse. That was not part of the deal. No. They were supposed to be our subordinates, and we were supposed to still be on top of the global economic supply chain, the global economic food chain. And they were just going to make our cheap shit and shut the fuck up and just be thankful that we allowed them to have those things. Right? This was not part of the deal. Them actually beating us at our own game. That's not allowed. That was not part of the deal. We can even look at, Alexandra says, call it state capitalism. I call it get good at this global economy. There's actually a really interesting article. I think it was Carl Jha that was sharing it. I shared it in the Discord server, in the China thread in the Discord server, about these critics of the Deng Xiaoping economic reforms in the late 70s, early 80s, being like, oh, so now you think this is going to happen, and you're going to be able to build these forces, and then you're going to be able to flip things around in the West. Oh, wow, I think how you're living in this fantasy land, and it's just listing all of these things that did inevitably end up happening. It's really fascinating, actually. They're saying it in this really condescending way. And they're just describing more or less perfectly exactly what has ended up happening. We can look at it after this, actually. It's quite interesting.
But our starting point is we have to do and we will do what the national interest, what Canadian workers require.
Now, International Trade Minister Mary Ng is going to join us in a few moments, but first, Brian Kingston is the president and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. So, Brian, thank you for making the time today. I heard from a lot of analysts on the CBC today, I think of Guy Saint-Jacques, for example, that the government really had no choice here. Certainly, this was something your group wanted. Do you think this was something they absolutely had to do today?
I think they had to do it, and I think they have done the right thing by making this announcement.
I'm sure this guy has some good sound opinions, totally unbiased.
With the United States. It always has been, and it always will be. And the success of the industry depends on continuing to align with the Americans in a range of policies, including trade policy. So as we see the Americans taking this threat from China seriously, we have to stand
threat of selling us
with them
affordable
in the approach
cars
to China, particularly as we get close to a review of our free trade agreement, the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement. We cannot be offside our biggest trading partner, our strongest ally on China, because it's not just bad for the automotive industry, that will have implications for the broader Canadian economy.
Now, obviously, you represent Canadian manufacturers. But what would you say to Canadians at large who question what the impact is going to be here on affordability of EVs?
Well, this is a preemptive measure because there are no Chinese manufactured EVs currently sold by Chinese manufacturers.
You really think the West will sell out the standard of living of their population and their economic power in exchange for short-term profits?
Shanghai right now, but obviously
unthinkable.
That's not a Chinese brand. Yes,
that's exactly correct. So it doesn't have an immediate impact on the existing market. This is preempting so that we get ahead of what we've seen, for example, in Europe, where Chinese manufacturers have gained massive market share in a very short period of time.
Does it not
and
have
that's
the
why is that a
potential to
bad
have an
thing?
Impact on the existing market?
They
given
gained
that
a
some of
large
the
market share in a short amount of time. Okay. And why should I care about that? How does that affect me in any way? The cars are evil. It's a Christine situation. That's right. China is making Christine style cars that are evil. It's like a maximum overdrive thing as well, and they also make us trans. So this is why we're doing this. The cars are literally Decepticons. You got to align with the Autobots. Thank you. Yeah, perhaps make better products if you don't want them gaining this market share. It's literally just saying like they're beating us, and we're not allowed. They're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to beat us at this or anything else. See you, Jay. Enjoy the barbecue.
Cars being sold right now are from China and would be hit by this tax?
No, because what we're
Trying
seeing
like
right
that
now
Italian
is we're in the
boxer.
early stages
Exactly.
of a transition.
It's not
But
fair.
We've gone from 3 EVs in 2012 in the Canadian market to over 80 now in virtually every size and segment. So the vehicles are here, but the industry does need more time to allow these major investments, $40 billion and counting in Canada, to actually achieve their economies of scale. And so today's announcement will buy that time and allow us to have more of these vehicles in market and ultimately the prices to come to more comparable to a gas-powered vehicle.
Okay, I am just going to stick on this point for 1 second because I know that part of the argument has been that the portion of Chinese manufactured vehicles in Canada is ramping up something like $2.2 billion of the market. So surely it will have some impact, even if it's not an enormous one, on the existing market.
I don't see an immediate impact on the market simply because we don't have significant volumes of these vehicles being sold. I think the bigger impact will be, can we get our supply chain up and running in the time required? Remember, the federal government has mandated 100% EV sales by 2035. That is a very steep climb, and a lot needs to happen in the next...
Can't have a 15K Chinese-made electric car. You can only have a 100K Cybertruck that will trap you inside and kill you. Exactly. Who is this guy? Well, it's Brian Kingston, president of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. So... just one of these unbiased, objective viewpoints that you bring on the power in politics to explain these things to the Canadian public. Excuse me, does Canada make cars LMAO ever thus to American Sims? Don't ask me to explain it, Lodane. I don't know what we're doing here.
11 years to make that a possibility. We need to have mines approved. We have to build charging infrastructure. We have to give these facilities time to ramp up production and come online. I was just in Windsor a couple of weeks ago and saw this phenomenal battery
Canadian
plant
Electric
which is
Moose
being built.
Organization.
So the footprint has been laid,
CEMO.
but it does take time. This won't happen overnight, and that's why the announcement today was so important.
It's our primary government bureaucracy. This is honestly just like so fascinating, though. It really is. And like someone was saying in the chat earlier, it's like you almost understand the skepticism. These are like critics of these economic reforms in China in 1979. And it's really incredible, these criticisms that they have and how eerily like prescient it is. All these things that they thought was like this complete fantasy. It also becomes clear that the so-called four modernizations, far from being a practical and down-to-earth approach to China's economic problems or an ambitious and far-reaching vision of the future, depending on what species of apologetics and sycophancy one chooses, is, in point of fact, a recipe for disaster, no more realistic and no more in the people's interest than the Shah's vaunted modernization efforts. And if one wants to speak of idealism of the most reactionary sort, then the assumptions which are the brick and mortar of these plans are well worth summarizing. Somehow, here's the good part. Somehow, the imperialists are going to aid China in developing an independent and comprehensive industrial base. China will at the same time beat them at their own game, playing banking syndicates and suppliers off against each other for loans and technology. And once China lays hold of all this wondrous technology, it will cut these backers loose, break free of any entanglements, and with this technology, change what Deng Xiaoping, in one of his characteristically blunt statements, called the ugly face of China. There are no production relations in this fantasy land, no imperialist power politics. Beneath all the trappings of this future world nonsense is the classical comprador contempt and fear of the masses taking society into their own hands, and awe and fright at the imperialists. I find that so interesting. And like we were saying before, it's the skepticism is somewhat understandable. You know, if you're like a devoted Maoist in late 70s China, like I get where the skepticism was coming from. And the fact that these things would like work in this way wasn't clear for many decades. That's why you have this whole problem with like elderly Western leftists that still have this weird attitude about China, because they're still operating under this kind of like framework. But it's like, it's hard to argue with the results. That's always been my argument whenever we talk about China and Deng Xiaoping and all these economic reforms. Again, it doesn't mean everything's perfect or that there aren't still problems or there's not still poverty or there's not still issues or things you can talk about or criticize or whatever. But it's like, it is hard to argue with the results. And especially in this specific way, when they're naming all these like fantasy land idealistic ideas for how this was supposed to work, which have all fully come true. And we're living now in the future where all of these things have actually happened exactly as it was planned. It truly is the year 2000. Yes, it is. And as we've talked about a number of times, this is what all our freaking out about China has been caused by. You know, all the stuff about human rights, the Michaels, all these accusations we hurl around. It's just because of this. It's because they're beating us at our own game. And like, if you're looking at like a chessboard, it's like the checkmate move is maybe still a couple of moves away, but it's clear where things are going. You know? This is why we don't give, and like what's happening in Palestine is the ultimate example of this. We don't fucking care about people's human rights in Xinjiang or Tibet or Hong Kong or wherever else. You know, we don't care. We don't care about human rights. We're literally subsidizing the mass murder of little kids right now in Palestine, and our human rights respecting, global, international rules-based order respecting leaders are all fully in support of it. We don't care about human rights. It's never been about anyone's human rights or respecting any of that shit. It's always been about, oh shit, we're getting beat at our own game, and we realized it a little bit too late. We really thought we had something. We really thought we did something. We thought we had these people under our thumb for the foreseeable permanent future, and we're enshrining Western hegemony permanently in the future. And we realized a little bit too late that it was actually not the case at all. And now we're scrambling to try and do something about it, and it's too late. And that's all the freak out about China. That's all it's ever been. That's all it's ever been about. Canada coping. Look at the Deng swimsuit pics. It's just, that's it. That's the guy. That's the guy that pulled it off. And again, we don't need to say it's perfect or there's not things you can find to criticize, or like there hasn't been people being exploited in that process, or there's not bad things that happen. No one's saying that and no one thinks that, but that's just like the ultimate kind of trend. That's the ultimate reality that we're dealing with now. They realized it and are continuing to do the same thing. Or they're trying to do like the things that used to work in these kinds of cases, and it's not fucking working anymore. How dare they do capitalism better than us? I mean, that's what it is. That's what it comes down to. And you can be kind of like a Western ultra or whatever that it's like, oh, it's capitalism, it's state capitalism, I can't ever support it. But like, that's just the reality. And it's subsidized a huge increase in the quality of life of everyone in China, which was a place that was deeply, deeply impoverished and still is in many ways. And if you talk to anyone in China that is supportive of this, they would acknowledge that they're nowhere near where they want to be. There is still deep poverty in China. Huge progress has been made. It does not mean that everyone is living some kind of life of luxury. But it has objectively, by any objective standard, led to a massive, massive increase in most people's quality of life in a country that was deeply, deeply impoverished and had a lot of issues with food security. And there's been just this objective increase in the vast majority of people's material conditions as a result of this, which I don't think is really arguable.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Objectively, sure. But have we considered my deeply biased subjective views on the matter?
Pac-Man, thanks for the 25 months. Tier 2. I appreciate it, Pac-Man. Thank you. But we do need to. That's right. We need to think about how this makes us feel. And it doesn't make me feel good. So that must mean that it's bad. Also, still many of the same problems with capitalism, externalities like pollution that remain to be dealt with. That's true as well, risk inverse, although there's also been a lot of progress on that front. Remember, there was the whole thing about smog in Chinese cities and stuff. And not to say that that doesn't still exist or it's not still a problem, but there's been huge, huge decreases in like
we simply
that
use
kind
the
of
computer
issue
to mark
like
up
air quality and
the
this kind of
size of the
stuff.
account.
Ligma.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thank you, Dimitri, for the 200 bits. I would be willing to believe they at least have a plan. Yeah, absolutely. In the same way that they have a plan to actually transition into a more sustainable energy economy. And they're saying, yeah, we're still emitting. We're still emitting carbon. We're not saying that we're not doing that. As we always talk about, part of the reason there still is a lot of carbon emissions is because of the fact that they're producing so much stuff for people in the West and people around the world. But they're like, we actually have a plan that we're following. What's our plan? What are we doing? Our plan is to talk a lot about it and to say, oh, climate change. Oh, that's going to be such a big problem. Oh, we care. We believe the science. And then continuing to not do anything about it. That's our plan. Our plan is to say, like, here's our emission levels that we're going to hit. Here's our emissions targets. And then every single year blowing right past them and never actually like hitting these targets that we're pointing out at all these various conferences. That's our plan. That's our plan, is to go to have conferences and like global meetings, and we like to talk about it. And then we don't actually do anything. That's our plan. We're too brainwashed here. They keep saying the same BS. Yeah, because we're the most heavily propagandized people in the world, contrary to what a lot of people seem to think. Our plan is to be distracted by whatever the parties are trying to get reelected on. Exactly. Well, it's the most important election of our lifetime. Which election? I don't know. Whatever one's coming up. They're expanding a Colt gun plant in Ontario, but killing battery plants. Awesome. Awesome. We're not going to do anything because China, it's not fair, but China is doing X, Y, and Z. Well, no, not like that, though. Changing it requires a new social transformation, and the leaders know it, and us crazies know it too. Yeah, exactly. And we also know how completely impossible it is here. Why would anyone say anything good about this country unless they got dropped on their head? Well, because they saw a fucking beer commercial in the 90s that gave them a sense of like nationalistic pride. That's why. Even all these reactionary Canadian nationalists, though, don't even say anything good about the country. They know it's dog shit. They just think it's dog shit for completely opposite reasons for what it actually is. The best thing Western capitalism ever created was Nerds Gummy Clusters. I got to agree with that, Kev B1. I don't know if you saw my tweet about that the other day, but I tried Nerds Gummy Clusters the other day, and fantastic, honestly. That's capitalist innovation. Sometimes it does create a good product, and Nerds Gummy Clusters are very solid. Speaking like someone who didn't see that Team Canada with Gretzky and Lemieux on it. Yeah, exactly. I can't wait until China comes up with their own processor that's competitive with the x86 and ARM processors, then puts a tariff on it. And it's really only a matter of time as well. It's really only a matter of time until that happens. Had nerd gummy clusters for the first time the other day and couldn't stop myself from eating the entire bag. Tremendous candy. Tremendous. Really, really good. Couldn't recommend it highly enough. You got to seek these clusters out, Old Dutch. Really good combination of crunchy, chewy, sweet, sour. It's all of these things at the same time. The West excels at diabetes. We're great at that, yeah. I wonder what kinds of treats we aren't even aware of in the Chinese markets. We're already getting crushed in the tweets,
You can count on me.
the treat
have good old
wars as well.
Talk you through all this.
You've seen street food there? It's just like unbelievable. Ames94, thanks for the 20 months tier 1. I appreciate that a lot. And the tweets. Thank you, Ames. And once again, folks, if anyone wants to support this stream, please do subscribe if you can. Trying to make the little number go up. I'm trying to get back on my regular schedule here. My regular schedule. If you want to support this program, please subscribe if you can or give subs. Join the community. Join the Friendship Triangle community. This is how I build my productive forces, is through this chat. You know, it's the only way that I'm able to do this show. I don't really get money from advertisements. I don't do any like tie-ins or like promo stuff. I hate doing that shit. I don't like thinking about it. This show is entirely funded by the listeners and the viewers and the chatters and the community. So if you can, please do subscribe. Please help support this program. Also sending tips, very, very, very helpful as well. You can use that using the exclamation point donate function in the chat. Those are all very, very helpful as well. Those tips.
Count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Sedusu, thank you for the 20 months of Prime. Thanks, Sedusu.
You've just become
very
an
kind of
member of the Friendship Triangle.
And thank you, Kijiji Genie, as well, for the 5 gifted subs and all the support. Thank you, Kijiji Genie. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. And if anyone else would like to support this program, please do. Please help me make the number go up. Please help keep this show on the air. Nerds Rope is like nerds in gum, but I think not in ball form. And it's not gum, but it's like a gummy texture. But I got to say, I did have Nerds Rope as well. And I didn't think it compared very well to the gummy clusters. It just seemed like two totally different kind of textures. Wasn't crazy about the Nerd Rope. Didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. Can we get to 20 subs? It's a great question, Kijiji. It's a great question.
Count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to
we are close to a hype train as well.
Keep the number go up.
Netlocked, thanks for the 46 months. Tier 1, and I really appreciate that. Netlocked. Close to the 4-year badge, which doesn't exist yet. Only Western innovations lately are in the candy and energy drink space. Yeah, and those are not, you can't totally discount those, you know? You can't totally discount them. What fluid are we talking for 4 years? I don't know. I think we're moving away from the fluids. I think my previous idea was to have some kind of a
use the computer
combo.
to mark up the size of the account.
Hand over your change. Malacca's TRRS Rob knife.
Thank you, Demetrios. I appreciate that. Hand over your change, Malakas. So yeah, we do have a hype train going now, folks. Level 2, very close to level 2. Just another sub would probably get us out of level 2. But yes, please subscribe if you can, folks. Help me make the little number go up. Would be really, really fantastic if I could put together a little bit of a run. It would, if I could put together a little run of the number becoming the good number, would go a long way. So if you do enjoy this program and you want to support this community, please do subscribe if you can. If you got a Prime sub kicking around, you know, if you got a Prime sub, totally free of charge, you can subscribe. And it really helps me out a lot.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Joe, thank you very much for the gifted sub. I appreciate that, Joe. Thank you. I will get through this little call to action here, and then maybe we can move on to talking about some more serious business. Although there's been some serious business going on. Yeah, it's starting to take over video games as well. It's true. Totally. And what we're seeing now is probably just the very first kind of salvo in that. We're going to be seeing plenty more of that, right? Considering how big that market is. You know what I've been playing the last couple of days is Horizon Frozen Wilds, the DLC, because I got Forbidden West, which I'm really excited to play, but I was recommended very strongly. I was recommended very, very strongly to play Frozen Wilds first, so I'm trying to make my way through that. I was influenced yet again, but I have been enjoying that so far. Really looking forward to Forbidden West. And also, I think it's good, too, because it's a cool story, and I enjoy it, but...
you can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I'm also kind of like remembering how the game works and everything. I'm back into my... I'm a machine-killing
through all this.
rampage. Soy Western action adventure RPG Horizon versus Chad Chinese Souls-like. Well, it's true, yeah. I do enjoy those Horizon games, though. Did you know John Carpenter's a big Horizon fan? I didn't know that. That's interesting. Diego, thanks for the gifted sub. Very much appreciated, Diego. And thanks, Pizzicata, as well, for 21 months tier 1. Thank you, Pizzicata. So yeah, I've been really enjoying that, though. Probably once I'm done the stream today, I'll hit up some more Horizon. So are there any more takers, folks? Any more takers? Any more fine individuals want to support this program? If you're a longtime viewer or chatter or listener, we got audio only gang as well, obviously. If you're a longtime viewer or listener or chatter, or if you're new to the community, if you came here through a raid, or if somehow the Twitch algorithm
to mark up
brought you
the
here,
size of the account.
If you're a lurker, we love our lurkers as well. Please subscribe if you can. Help me make the little number go up. And also, as well, I keep saying this, but the tips, very, very valuable right now. And I do appreciate it a lot. And thank you, Lodane, for the 100 bits. And I want you to get the emote as well. However long ago, it was years at this point, you recommended I play Control, and I absolutely loved that one. I think our game tastes are similar. Control was very cool, yeah, and I never finished it either. And I have a little bit of regret that I didn't finish it. I think part of it is that I just like, I even though PC gaming can be superior in many ways, it's just like I get tired of sitting here at my desk. I probably would have appreciated Control more on console. playing it with keyboard and mouse was not quite as good. I don't know. You don't have to do that. You can use a controller. Controller. I've kind of moved away from Helldivers too. I loved Helldivers as well. We played a lot with that, Dimitri. And by the way, Dimitri, my son still always talks about the time that like you didn't get on the escape shuttle. And I went, Dimitri! My son still talks about that like at least weekly. He thought that was very funny. But take care, Dimitri. Thanks for stopping by. Malaka! The wireless and couch aspect of consoles is underrated. It's true. I only play on console. I think I'm too dumb for keyboard and mouse. I'm not too dumb. Like, for instance, Fortnite, I would much rather play on keyboard and mouse. Even Helldivers, I really liked on keyboard and mouse. But, like for Horizon, for example, that's a game that's way better on the with the manette, as we say in Quebec. My job has me sitting, so I find other ways to be active. As I mentioned the other day, I've been trying to bike more. Another thing I've been influenced on. A good way for me to get around the city and be a little bit more active. Helldivers has taken a back burner for me lately. I'm back on my GTA Online, Baldur's Gate 3, and Sims 2. Bullshit again. All depends on who's playing with me. Yeah, and Helldivers, that was a big thing about it, just like having a crew and you could log on and I would see people from the community and see friends I knew playing it and like logging on and having those really fun adventures. Like that was really an unbeatable vibe. Montreal does seem to have really great bike infrastructure. I was mentioning it the other day. I biked from like the Plateau to Old Montreal the other day, which is basically like all downhill, and it was like really cool and fun. Helldivers is still good, but after the new thing hump, it just kind of mad out. Yeah, I mean, like I said, having a community around it is what makes it really cool. And I got distracted by the NBA playoffs, and then I got distracted by other stuff, so I just haven't really gotten back into it. I bought it, then never played it. Well, I got plenty of those as well. I still would recommend it. It's still very fun. It's still a very cool game. Go on Benny's Sunday fun day to play Helldivers with Marcus, Johnny, Wes, me. Well, that would be fun. That would be fun. I'm often otherwise engaged on Sundays. Oh, so are there any other fine individuals that would like to support this channel? I'll ask one final time before moving on here. Would be fantastic to get into the 20 territory before moving on. Really, really going to try and hit these targets over the next foreseeable future. Really every day is what I should be doing it, but I know it's not always possible. But if you do want to support this program, please do. Please join the community. Join the Friendship Triangle system. It's Twitch's only two-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down cloud tiered reward system. It's the only such system that exists on this platform. So if you can, please do join that and support the work that I do right here every single day on this program. I got this stupid emote. What is that, a balloon dog? Yeah. Don't know what kind of context that's going to be useful, but you got it. We did it. We did it, fam. We did it. Okay, so thinking about what to do next here. Should I take a little break? I might just take like a little 5-minute break and go just like stand up and walk around a little bit, stretch my legs, etc. What do we think about that, chat? Do you think we can tolerate that? Am I allowed to just like stop for like 5 minutes? Can you keep it down? I'm trying to listen to a meeting over here. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Sorry to be disruptive to your meeting. No stop, only stream. Okay, so I'm just going to put together a little something here. Little interlude
You could
here.
look at any existing.
Yeah, you know it's coming. You know it's coming, folks. Okay, I'm gonna take a little bit of a interlude, just a couple minutes. Carl Jad, a quick 15-minute interview about Wukong. If you want to continue the China talk after the break, we will. We will think about that. Okay, I'll take a little break. I'll come back. And then we'll figure out what's next on this show that I plan so well. Okay, so don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere, Chad. I'll be right back.
You could look at any existing socialist country. If you don't want to call them socialist, call them whatever you want. Post-capitalist, whatever. I don't care. Call them camels, window shades. Doesn't matter. As long as we know the countries we're talking about. You can look at any one of those countries, and you can evaluate them in several ways. One, comparing them to what they had before. And that, to me, is what's very compelling. That's what's so compelling about Cuba, for instance. When I was in Cuba, I was up in the Escambray, which is like the Appalachia of Cuba, very rugged mountains of poor people, very poor they were. And I said to this campesino, I said, "Do you like Fidel?" And he said, "Sí, with all our souls." I remember his gesture, with all our souls. I said, "Why?" And he pointed to this clinic right up there on the hill, which we had visited. He said, "Look at that." He said, "Before the revolution, we never saw a doctor. If someone was seriously ill, it would take 20 people to carry that person, because you'd go day and night. It would take 2 days to get to the hospital. First, because it was far away, and second, because you couldn't go straight. You couldn't cross the latifundio lands. The boss would kill you, so you had to go like this. And often when we got to the hospital, the person might be dead by the time we got there. Now we have this clinic up here with a full-time doctor. And today, a doctor in Cuba, when you become a doctor, you've got to spend 2 years out in the country. That's your dedication to the people. And a dentist who comes 1 day a week. And for more serious things, we're not more than 20 minutes away from a larger hospital. That's in the Escambray. So that's freedom. We're freer today. We have more life. And I talked to a guy in Havana who says to me, "Before, all I used to see here in Havana, you call this drab and dull. We see it as a cleaner city." It's true, you got the paint is peeling off the walls, but you don't see kids begging in the streets anymore, and you don't see prostitutes. All we said was prostitutes. Prostitution used to be one of the biggest industries. And today, this man is going to night school. He said, "I can read. I can read." Do you know what it means to be able to read? Do you know what it means to be able not to read? I remember when I gave my book to my father, I dedicated a book of mine, Power and the Powerless, to my father. I said, "To my father with my love." Gave him a copy of the book. He opened it up, looked at that. He'd only gone to the 7th grade. He was a son of an immigrant, a working class Italian. And he opens the book and he starts looking through it and he gets misty-eyed, very misty-eyed. And I thought it's because he was so touched that his son had dedicated a book to him. That wasn't the reason. He looks up to me and says, "I can't read this, kid." I said, "That's okay, Dad. Neither can the students. I mean, that's not something. I mean, don't worry about that. I wrote it for you. I mean, it's your book, and you don't have to read it. You know, it's a very complicated book, an academic book." He says, "I can't read this book." And the defeat that man felt. That's what illiteracy is about. That's what the joy of literacy programs is. That's why in Nicaragua you got people walking proud now for the first time. They were animals before. They weren't allowed to read. They weren't taught to read. So you compare a country to what it came from with all its imperfections, and those who demand instant perfection. The day after the revolution, they get up and say, "Are there civil liberties for the fascists? Are they going to be allowed to have their newspapers and their radio program? Are they going to be able to keep all their farms?" The passion that some of our liberals feel the day after the revolution, the passion and concern they feel for the fascists, the civil rights and civil liberties of those fascists who were dumping and destroying and murdering people before. Now the revolution has got to be perfect. It's got to be flawless. Well, that isn't my criteria. My criteria is what happens to those people who couldn't read. What happens to those babies that couldn't eat, that died of hunger? And that's why I support revolution. The revolution that feeds the children gets my support. Not blindly, not unqualifiedly. And the Reaganite government that tries to stop that kind of process, that tries to keep those people in poverty and illiteracy and hunger, that gets my undiluted animosity and opposition. You could look at any existing socialist country, if you don't want to call them socialist, call them whatever you want, post-capitalist, whatever, I don't care, call them camels, window shades, doesn't matter, as long as you know the countries we're talking about. You can look at any one of those countries and you can evaluate them in several ways. One, comparing them to what they had before. And that to me is what's very compelling. That's what's so compelling about Cuba, for instance. When I was in Cuba, I was up in the Escambray, which is like the Appalachia of Cuba, very rugged mountains, people, very poor they were. And I said to this campesino, I said, "Do you like Fidel?" And he said, "Sí, sí, with all our soul." I remember his gesture, with all our soul. I said, "Why?" And he pointed to this clinic right up there on the hill, which we had visited. He said, "Look at that." He said, "Before the revolution, we never saw a doctor. If someone was seriously ill, it would take 20 people to carry that person, because you'd go day and night. It would take 2 days to get to the hospital. First, because it was far away, and second, because you couldn't go straight. You couldn't cross the latifundio lands. The boss would kill you, so you had to go like this. And often when we got to the hospital, the person might be dead by the time we got there. Now we have this clinic up here with a full-time doctor. And today, a doctor in Cuba, when you become a doctor, you've got to spend 2 years out in the country. That's your dedication to the people. And a dentist who comes 1 day a week. And for more serious things, we're not more than 20 minutes away from a larger hospital. That's in the Escambray. So that's freedom. We're freer today. We have more life. And I talked to a guy in Havana who says to me, "Before, all I used to see here in Havana, you call this drab and dull. We see it as a cleaner city." It's true, you got the paint is peeling off the walls, but you don't see kids begging in the streets anymore, and you don't see prostitutes. All we used to have was prostitutes. Prostitution used to be one of the biggest industries. And today, this man is going to night school. He said, "I can read. I can read." Do you know what it means to be able to read? Do you know what it means to be able not to read? I remember when I gave my book to my father, I dedicated a book of mine, Power and the Powerless, to my father. I said, "To my father with my love." Gave him a copy of the book. He opened it up, looked at that. He'd only gone to the 7th grade. He was a son of an immigrant, a working class Italian. And he opens the book and he starts looking through it. And he gets misty-eyed, very misty-eyed. And I thought it's because he was so touched that his son had dedicated a book to him. That wasn't the reason. He looks up to me and says, "I can't read this, kid." I said, "That's okay, Dad. Neither can the students. I mean, that's not something. I mean, don't worry about that. I wrote it for you. I mean, it's your book, and you don't have to read it. You know, it's a very complicated book, an academic book." He said, "I can't read this book." And the defeat that man felt. That's what illiteracy is about. That's what the joy of literacy programs is. That's why in Nicaragua you got people walking proud now for the first time. They were animals before. They weren't allowed to read. They weren't taught to read. So you compare a country to what it came from with all its imperfections, and those who demand instant perfection. The day after the revolution, they get up and say, are there civil liberties for the fascists? Are they going to be allowed to have their newspapers and their radio program? Are they going to be able to keep all their farms? The passion that some of our liberals feel the day after the revolution, the passion and concern they feel for the fascists, the civil rights and civil liberties of those fascists who were dumping and destroying and murdering people before. Now the revolution has got to be perfect. It's got to be flawless. Well, that isn't my criteria. My criteria is what happens to those people who couldn't read. What happens to those babies that couldn't eat, that died of hunger? And that's why I support revolution. The revolution that feeds the children gets my support. Not blindly, not unqualifiedly. And the Reaganite government that tries to stop that kind of process, that tries to keep those people in poverty and illiteracy and hunger, that gets my undiluted animosity and opposition. You could...
Man, okay, I knew I was muted. You don't need to say anything. I knew, okay? I knew. I figured it out. We don't need to, let's move past it. You got to wonder, because as we know from watching that speech many times, that whole section just came from the Q&A. And you got to wonder, like, if I just imagine thinking about someone like present at that speech, if they knew they were witnessing this iconic moment. He was really cooking there. He really was. I've seen people try to fix the video and change the color correction or whatever. It's like, it's yellow. It's supposed to be yellow. You wouldn't believe how many times I've shut down my upper middle class, white male, straight, married, liberal friends with our fascists allowed to have their newspapers during conversations. It's pretty hard to fuck with that argument, honestly. And by the way, all the stuff we were talking about China, I think using this kind of method of analysis, that's exactly why not only can you see how valuable the Chinese Revolution was and how important Mao was as a figure, but also applying that to these opening up reforms, which for many years it was not really clear whether those were going to pay off to the same extent. But I think you can apply that analysis to both of these pivotal moments in Chinese history. The revolution and the Deng Xiaoping period. You go like the Chinese Revolution. Well, with all its imperfections, and there were problems, there were mistakes, there were famines that did happen. There were parts of the Cultural Revolution that I think even the most dedicated Maoist would be like, well, maybe some of that went a little bit too far, But what was it coming from? It's coming from this deeply impoverished, semi-colonized country, huge amounts of poverty and food insecurity and illiteracy. And it was a huge transformation, a huge social and political and economic transformation that objectively raised people's standards of living. Not that it was perfect, but you can see this progressive process when you compare it to what came before. And then when this opening up period started as well, it was even with the gains that had been made, especially in literacy and education. That was a huge part of the Cultural Revolution, which was really important, right? But still a lot of poverty, still a lot of issues, no real industrialization, not a huge opportunity to advance in that respect. And then you look at China now versus before that period, and you see this process, this progressive process, and the impact that it's had on millions of people's lives, billions actually. And it doesn't mean that it's perfect. I think that's the big takeaway from that speech. It doesn't mean that it's uncritical or that it's perfect or that mistakes didn't happen or that contradictions didn't happen or that people weren't exploited or bad things didn't happen. You can find those things. You can find those points of criticism. But that's the basic question. is there this progressive process happening? You know, are people's living standards going up or are they going down? You know, what's the role in the world of China at that time versus today? You know, and you can see when you just judge it on that metric and not is everything perfect, is everything going according to the book, and you can hold up the capital or whatever, is everything going according to the book? And it isn't. You can point to here, and here where they're deviating. But it's like, is this progressive revolutionary process happening? Bad things are happening now under our own system, but it's never an argument for overthrowing it somehow. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, depending on who's making it. Some people are making it in that way, but not by people that are entrenched in the system or support it. Effusive Stoic got a dang quote here. I looked forward to the end of the Cold War, but now I feel disappointed. It seems that one Cold War has come to an end, but the two others have already begun. One is being waged against all the countries of the South and the Third World, and the other against socialism. The Western countries are staging a Third World War without gunsmoke. By that I mean they want to bring about the peaceful evolution of socialist countries towards capitalism. Yeah, and it's almost like you have to make them think, these Western countries, make them think you're on board with that project in order for them to take their boot off your neck for a little while, allowing you to industrialize to this extent. And then later, when they get really comfortable with that arrangement, you pull out the rug from under them. And lo and behold, that is fucking exactly what has happened. And as always, whenever we talk about this, I just remain pretty amazed and pretty amazed by that whole process, you know? And I think it's just objectively really incredible. It's been an objectively really incredible series of events. Have you considered a revolution would mess with my vacation plans? What about my mortgage? I got a lot invested in this. I got a lot invested in this system that runs on human misery. I got my whole life savings invested in this thing. We just got to keep the human misery machine going for the foreseeable future. Have you read any Xi writing? I mean, just a little bit, like tidbits that we've read like on this stream here and there. It's certainly something I think we should all be reading more, considering I think how important of a figure we're going to look back on Xi Jinping as being. It's called Being an Adult, Sweetie. Mankind misery machine has all the alliteration, but human fits better. It's true, yeah. How else will I be able to go to an exploited tropical island country and have all the local population dote on me? Exactly. Better not change anything about this. Anyway, you got to vote for Kamala Harris. Better things are not possible. We just have we can have mandatory joy. We got to keep the human misery machine in place, but inject some mandatory joy into that, some joy and optimism into the misery machine. And we're going to put rainbow stickers on it and all kinds of stuff. We got to keep that misery machine going. You will be joyful. I demand. I demand you be joyful while we're doing genocide. I've been told criticizing Harris is anti-revolutionary, actually. Very coherent. Well, unless you do think she's a secret Marxist, in which case maybe it is. She has her long-term plan in place, and we're us ultras are there fucking it up by doubting her. She's getting the camps ready for all the re-education camps ready for all the reactionaries, and we're sitting here complaining about it. Don't worry, guys. Kamala is just using AIPAC money to get elected. When she's in office, we can surely push her left. Exactly. She's got a plan to end the genocide in place. This is how she finally wins back her father's love. Exactly. She's gonna unveil him. He's gonna be the economic czar after the inauguration. Then we're really gonna start getting some stuff done. It really is the most important election of your lifetime. It really is. Trump has basically given up on winning. He's selling Trump cards and NFTs. The Trump card thing is like crazy. Like, it really is. We'll get a yellow Kamala video. Like, I saw that Trump AI thing. Or no, sorry, not Trump AI thing. I only say that because I see the Trump card and NFT thing, and it looks like it is AI. Like, I actually thought it was. But it's not. It's very real. In 2024. He can't do it. He can't leave the grifting roots. He just can't do it. I'm trying to find the video. Why can't I find it?
President Donald J. Trump with some very exciting news.
This is really crazy,
By
honestly.
popular demand, I'm doing a new series of Trump digital trading cards. You all know what they are. We've had a lot of fun with them. It's called the America First Collection. 50 all-new stunning digital trading cards. It's really something. These cards show me dancing and even me holding some Bitcoins. Here's the best part. I'm doing great things for my Trump digital card collectors. First, there's the real physical Trump cards. Purchase 15 or more of my Trump digital trading cards and we'll mail you a beautiful physical trading card.
It's really something. Which one of y'all's moms and dads are getting these?
Each physical trading card has an authentic piece of my suit that I wore for the presidential debate, and people are calling it the knockout suit. I don't know about that, but that's what they're calling it. So we'll cut up the knockout suit, and you're going to get a piece of it, and we'll be randomly autographing 5 of them.
He still wishes he was running against Joe Brandon.
This is something to...
Is this an AI video? Well, that's what I mean. Like, it really seems like that. It really seems like it is, but no, it's very real.
Give your family, your kids, your grandchildren. Number 2 is to purchase 75 of my Trump digital trading cards, and you will also be invited to join me for a gala dinner at my beautiful country club in Jupiter, Florida. We really have tremendous dinners with my collectors. Have a lot of fun together. We're gonna have a good time. I'm keeping my Trump digital trading cards at the same price of $99 each. We've done that right from the beginning. So go to collect.
Trump's last breath will be revealing who is the they. They're always saying stuff. It's the big, strong guys that come up to him with tears in their eyes. Big, muscly dudes. Saving my money until he sells cards with pieces of the suit he got shot in. I'm sure that's coming up next. It's so funny that they keep on being like, remember that this happened. They have to remind people that it happened. Don't forget that this happened. I don't think it did happen. I don't think anything happened at all. I think they made it up.
Cards.com. It's really easy to buy. You just need an email address and a credit card or crypto. You know, they call me the crypto president. I don't know if that's true or not, but a lot of people are saying that. So don't miss out. Go to collecttrumpcards.com.
Insane.
Go right now and collect your piece of American history. Let's have fun together and enjoy my Trump cards. We're going to have a lot of fun. We'll be talking about it for a long time. Thank you very much. Have a good time.
Amazing. Honestly. I don't know if that's true, but a lot of people are saying it. That's what I say about my it's going to move away from that gag actually. These will sell fast. Exactly. It's like this is like less of a scam than the whole like TRRS thing, which obviously is not a scam or a cult. I don't even know why I would say that. But like it's sillier. Like the TRRS friendship triangle thing is significantly more of a legitimate thing, more of an actual investment opportunity than whatever this is. As we know, folks, the friendship triangle does meaningfully improve people's lives, right? It decreases the alienation. It decreases the isolation. You get community. You get trickle-down clout. These are all legitimate things. What is this bullshit cards? What is that? What is that? You get access to high-level people. Anyway, like there's a lot of stuff that I want to get into, but I was thinking like, you know, maybe it might be good. We haven't done one of these for a while. But there is this, I think, a pertinent Parenti speech called Voting in the USA, How the Vote Was Won and Lost. And I'm kind of thinking like, you know, there's plenty of stuff more to get into, but I'm going to be here tomorrow for a full-length stream as well. So maybe today it could be one of our classic patented Parenti days, and it seems like it might be relevant in this whole America declines phenomenon. It almost captures the energy of my favorite Trump ad of all time, where he goes for the Hindu nationalist contingent. He doesn't even really need to do anything to do that. They're already on board.
If I'm elected president, the Indian and Hindu community will have a true friend in the White House. India has seen firsthand the brutality of terrorism and cross-border violence, including the attacks in Mumbai. We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism. I look forward to working with Prime Minister Modi, who has been very energetic in reforming India's bureaucracy. Under a Trump administration, we are going to become even better friends. In fact, we are going to be best friends. Abhi ki bar, Trump Sarkar. We love the Hindus. We love India. I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Okay, honest question though. Is that real? That's not real, right? That's not like a real ad that was on TV, right, Husker? Husker saying this was on TV. I do not believe that. Please tell me that's not real. That is 100% real, and it was on TV for the 2016 cycle. My goodness. I can understand hating Dems, but I'll never be able to understand voting for that guy. I think I understand it on some level, Max. So like this is something that a lot of people have been grappling with since 2016. I think I understand it on some level, is that people get the basic idea that this man pisses off powerful people that they hate in both parties. The neocons hate him. The big liberals hate him. And it's like these people have this what I think is actually a very legitimate anger and resentment towards the American ruling class. And is Donald Trump, should he be an avatar for that anger and resentment? Is he on those people's side? No, obviously not. Obviously not. I think we know that. But I think on some kind of like deep down level, people were just like, he is the American ruling class. He is, but he's not. He is, but he's also on the outside looking in. He wants to be part of their big club, but he's not really. So I think on some level it's that. It's just like, this man, I might not be able to trust him. He's a game show host. He's like a used car salesman. He's like a obvious con man and scammer. But the people that I feel like have ruined my life and ruined my future all despise this guy. And if he wins, they're going to be upset. And I think on some fundamental level, there's a lot of people that just gravitate towards him purely on those grounds. The true believers, I don't get. The ones that really are like, this guy's on my side. Like that I don't understand. Believe me, like that I completely don't get at all. Thinking that this guy's like going to be an ally to like the working class or whatever, something like that. So that I'm not making excuses for. That's just a preposterous thing to think and believe. Yeah, it's just to own the libs, basically. I think for a lot of people, that's what it is. He's the billionaire on my side. Yeah, he's just an obvious, like, con artist. You know, it seems like it should be obvious to anybody. But in the there's a great American tradition of people exactly like that becoming very prominent and powerful. As long as America has existed, there's been people like that rising to the very top. Obvious scammers and con artists and carnival barkers, you know? So it makes sense on that level too. I think that was the whole thing about the 2016 election. If you have like West Wing brain, you're just like, there's no fucking way this man will ever win. And then as soon as he did win, it's just like, you think about it, it's like, this is the most obvious thing that has ever happened. Of course he won. Of course he beat Hillary Clinton in an election, you know? It's the most American thing to have ever happened. A nation where infinite free land was available is, of course, prone to magical thinking. Yeah, to say the least. Anyway, look at this picture of Parenti. Look how hard this goes. I don't think I've ever seen him with this specific, like this is insane. Like, what the fuck? Come on. I love snow. Yeah. I'd like to see how his hair fared in a blizzard. Keith Ellison getting laughed at comes to mind. Yeah, for sure. I know I watched that clip a lot following the 2016 election. This man has some momentum. This liberal dipshit laugh. Chuckling at him like he's just saying the most outrageous thing you can imagine. You got to admit that stealing Hill Dog's thunder is kind of worth this all. I would leave that up to other people to decide. It's definitely funny to see someone like that be disappointed and have their dreams and their hopes get crushed. You know, there's also, you know, people out there that really suffered as a result. You know, would things have been different if the Democrats had been in charge? You know, I don't know. I mean, that's a question for another time. Anyway, I think this should be interesting. Michael Parenti, voting in the USA, how the vote was won and lost. We've never watched this one. It's a good time to do it, considering the election coming up. Bell riots starting next week, something to look forward to. I've been watching a lot of Deep Space Nine lately as well. Not only are the Bell riots coming up, but today is also the Skynet anniversary of when Skynet became self-aware. We talked about T2 earlier, so a couple of big sci-fi anniversaries coming up today and moving forward. I think the thing about like Star Trek and Deep Space Nine and the Bell riots is just this idea that America would somehow be shocked into action if these riots took place in some of these sanctuary cities. In reality, most Americans would be like, fuck them, firebomb the neighborhoods. It seems like what the attitude of most liberal Americans would be, to say nothing of the reactionaries. Isn't that in T3? It's depicted in T3, but Arnold mentions it. He mentions August 29th, 1997 in both Terminator films. Okay, so there's plenty more news to get to. There's more election stuff. There's certainly a lot of Palestine, Gaza stuff to get into. But I think for today, it's been a while since we did one of these. It's pertinent to everything we're talking about. It's our guy, Michael Parenti. Let's throw this on one more time before I put on this speech. If you do want to support this program, please do subscribe if you can. $5 a month. Support the community. Support the work that I do on here. Help me make that little number at the bottom of the screen. I'm pointing to it now. Help me make that little number go up. It's all very much appreciated and helps me out a lot. Or send a tip. Tips still, as always, very, very much appreciated. If you got $1, $2, $5, $10, whatever it is, if you want to support the work that I do on here and you don't feel like subscribing to twitch.tv, you can also send a tip using that link. Really, really helpful. Really, really appreciate anyone that tips or anyone that supports this program at all, really. Let's put this on.
TUC Radio, Time of Useful Consciousness. Michael Parenti, Voting in the USA, How the Vote Was Won and Lost. If the right to vote is taken as a measure of a vibrant democracy, the United States came off to a bad start. Michael Parenti says that the most interesting list from the period of 1787 is the rather long one of people who were not allowed to vote, and he names all of them. Parenti is one of the nation's leading progressive political analysts. After receiving his PhD in political science from Yale, he has taught at colleges and universities in the U.S. and abroad.
The talk is about the struggle to vote. And we never really talk about that. We just think about voting, get out the vote, be a good citizen and vote. But in fact, voting was not something that was handed to the people on a platter. They had to struggle and fight for it. This country did not begin as a popular democracy. There was a remarkable event that took place. It's probably unique in history, where the country was actually founded, where people came together, men of wealth came together from the various states, and they formulated a document called the Constitutional Act. But far more interesting even than the Constitution was the Constitutional Convention. And what was remarkable was there was one of the delegates to the convention wrote down verbatim what these people were discussing. And George Washington got up and he said, let's not fashion a document just for the idea of pleasing the people. It's interesting. And they all thought they were talking in strictest of confidentiality, and they were, because the Independence Hall where they met in Philadelphia was sealed off. And this was in the summer of 1787, a hot summer, and they kept all the windows closed. It must have been suffocating, so as not to be overheard by people outside. You always got to say, what do you got to hide when you can't go public with it? Well, this one delegate wrote it all down, and he wouldn't publish it for 50 years until after everybody was dead. And he was one of the last. He was James Madison, who became the 4th president of the United States. And speaking confidentially to each other, they said things like, the people are not to be trusted. The people are dangerous. Only men of wealth and substance can be trusted with the responsibility of government. The people are fickle and dangerous.
It's not crazy in there, Joe.
They're a threat to our property. The function of government is to protect those who have property. And they meant wealth. By property, they meant wealth. This was in an age when most of the wealth, not all of it, but a lot of your wealth was in realty. It was in what we today call that property. When we say property, we mean only two things: property, land, and such, or personal possession. You know, that's my property, that book or that jacket or something. But there was also a lot of capital wealth. There was a very rich merchant class and banking class, but almost all of them speculated. So their concern, they formulated this thing not to include the people, but to exclude. And they fashioned a constitution that had almost no vote in it. The president wasn't elected by the people. He was elected by an electoral college, still is, as you know, through bitter experience. That was to meet in the respective states, and that would be made up of these men of substance who would then deliberate months after they've been elected by the people, and then months after the people had elected them, they would deliberate and they would decide who was going to be the president. So there was this filter thing. It was supposed to operate as a real filter. The people were like just simply an advisory group, you see. There was that. They had courts, but the judges served for life, and they were not elected by anybody. They were appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. They had a Senate. It was not popularly elected. It was elected by the various state legislatures in those days. That's been changed. That was amended. The only thing they had left was, so they had these three: executive, judiciary, legislative, broken into two branches that could check each other with staggered terms. The whole thing is a whole set of checks and locks and vetoes. Finally, they got to the House of Representatives, and just before that, James Wilson of Philadelphia got up and he said, I'm getting sick and tired of hearing about property and protecting wealth, protecting the rich from the poor and all that. I think
So fucked to be so excited about the Democrats. Some of the people in this video.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, right. And they went on rigging up this Constitution. When they got to the House of Representatives, two members of this delegation got up and said, look, if we're going to get this Constitution ratified and accepted, if this thing's going to be effective, you got to leave a piece of the action for the people. They didn't exactly use terms like a piece of the action. That came more later with the crap games in New York. But that was George Mason of Virginia, after whom George Mason University is named, and Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania. They both said, and Franklin made the point, he said, you know, the common soldiers served well and faithfully in the Revolution and all that, and you have to trust the people to some degree. And Madison wrote in Federalist Paper number 10, it's a remarkable document. I've never seen any bourgeois leader with such economy of language lay it out and say what government is really about. Government is about how to, he said, this is the problem here, how to get enough legitimacy for this government without making it too responsive to popular demand, but giving it the aura, give it the impression of being serving the popular people. How to make it a republic without making it too much of a republic, in other words. And then he has a phrase in there, he says, the most common and durable source
Wonder who that
of
could
faction.
be about.
And by faction, he meant party, he meant class divisions. Every time he said faction, you could put the word class if you want. The most common and durable source of faction is the various and unequal distribution of property. Those who have and those who have not have forever been at odds, and goes on. I haven't read that stuff in years. I've written about it, actually. The 8th edition of Democracy for the Few has all that in it, one of the chapters. So the country didn't begin as a popular democracy. In fact, it was fashioned by men who feared democracy, denounced democracy. Elbert's Jerry said, democracy is a plague of history. Democracy is something we don't want. Roger Sherman, democracy is something to be feared. It's an excess. It's the meat of demagogues and blah, 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 and all that stuff. Now, who voted for this House of Representatives and for these state legislatures? I can make it easy, or actually go a long way around to tell you who voted, the really long way around to tell you who voted by telling you who did not vote. That takes more time. All the women in society did not vote. All Native American indigenous peoples with whom that misnamed Indians, did not vote and could not vote. All people of African descent could not vote, whether they were slaves or freedmen. And there was 250,000 freedmen in the North and 250,000 freedmen in the South who were free, had gotten their freedom, manumitted from their slave holders and such. But they still couldn't vote. Very rare. Maybe some little communities in Massachusetts, some guy whose family came over in slavery in 1680 or something and was freed. Or maybe he could have voted. I won't vouch. But just about most of them couldn't vote. All indentured servants could not vote because they really weren't citizens. They were indentured. And they were whites. They were Caucasians, or near Caucasians or such, who had to work off slavery, like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years or something, and then they were allowed out, and they became ordinary citizens. So that left only white males who could vote. No, most white males could not vote either because you needed to have some kind of property. As the gentleman pointed out, most of the propertyless white males It varied from state to state. In some states, it was as low as 10%, as you said, or even less. In other states, like Pennsylvania, where the property qualifications were a little less severe, it might have been 30% or so or more. 2 centuries of struggle brought real gains in extending the franchise. And much of American history is this history of just getting the vote, getting the right to vote. Working class agitations in the 1820s and 1830s really developed. The factory system was coming in, and suddenly there was a new class. They weren't artisans, they weren't small farmers. They were these people who literally made or worked just with their hands. And they were called, these workers, we call them workers today, they were called manufacturers. And you get it from the Latin, manus factum, making with the hands. So the bosses not only expropriated their labor, but eventually expropriated their name, too. Now when we say manufacturers, we mean the owners. These manufacturers, they were also known as the mechanic class. They fought, and they were developing in substantial numbers. Just as the Founding Fathers predicted, by the way, in Philadelphia, they said, we're going to get populations that are really going to accumulate in the cities. We're going to get a lot of people who don't have any property, any small farms in this, because manufacturing was already starting by 1780. Alexander Hamilton already had child labor going and was praising it, and went into factories and said, isn't this wonderful, these little children, working class, children of the poor. And he said, it teaches them diligence and applying themselves, and they know how to move nimbly, and they work in this and that. Of course,
Their
he's
tiny
getting
little
rich off their
fingers are
labor,
good
so
for
he finds nothing but virtue
textiles and stuff.
in their exploitation. So the qualifications for white males pretty much eliminated.
Thank you, Ross Publica, for the 24 months, Tier 1. Congratulations to you on the 24-month, 2-year, shimmering golden TRRS sub badge. Thank you, Ross.
By 1830, and this also enabled the election of Andrew Jackson. After about a century, 100 years, women won the right to vote. It took a mere 100 years. See the responsive, flexible democratic system here. 100 years of agitation, and women got the right to vote, as you know, in the 19th Amendment, passed in 1920. Another group of people who are still disfranchised, there's about 600,000 of them who do not have a vote for the Senate or the House, and I was one of them for about 12 years, are people who live in the District of Columbia. We have no vote. We have a delegate we can elect to the House of Representatives, and she can vote in committees and such, but she can't vote on final bills, and we have no representation in the Senate. I'm not there now. That's why I moved to California, so I could vote and no, that's not why, but... The 15th Amendment, ratified in 1870, written in the blood of the Civil War, abolished voter discrimination because of race. It took another 100 years for that to materialize, and we're still in the middle of that struggle. In 1944, the Supreme Court ruled that whites-only party primaries were unconstitutional, that a party primary was an election. See, in the South, they had the subterfuge. Well, this isn't elections. It's got nothing to do with elections. This is primaries, and the political party is a private group, and so we don't want any blacks voting in the primary. So, in other words, most legal restrictions, except for the District of Columbia and except for people in prison and ex-prisoners, most legal restrictions have been removed, but there still are many administrative barriers, and that's what we're facing today. Now, the United States is the only Western democracy that makes it difficult for people to vote. They make it difficult. It's hard to sometimes find out, where the hell do I register? Where do I go? In a country like Sweden, for instance, which has much higher voter participation, the government, and other countries like that, governments actively pursue programs to register voters. In the U.S., federal and state officials have a history of making it difficult to register. Registration centers, for instance, with
now there's no primary at all.
Only during working hours. Well, you know what a lot of people do during working hours? They work, and they can't go register. They can't give up a whole half a day.
They're still trying to make it harder.
A day's pay to go and register.
Think about Republicans and conservatives freaking out about mail-in ballots, like saying mail-in ballots are somehow like invalid.
Registration forms are often unnecessarily complex. They're sometimes in short supply, poorly distributed, rather sluggishly
In America,
processed.
they just rush you to sign the selective service card when you're 18.
Georgia and Arizona, voter ID requirements and ID fees really amount to an unconstitutional poll tax. That is, you have to pay something to get an ID card, which enables
the Hamilton guy, DJ?
Well, that's a poll tax.
Probably.
And we fought that was another restriction that I didn't mention before. There were all sorts of restrictions before this, but I want to get to today because you could spend a couple of hours on the whole history of undermining the vote, restricting the vote, suppressing the vote, trying to keep it away and out of the hands of ordinary working and poor people. So the poll tax was abolished, but it comes in through the back door with ID fees and such. All of these things, by the way, are rationalized. You got them going today. The Republican Party has been cooking up. I don't want to say the whole Republican Party is this way, but this Bush reactionary leadership is really very good at finding solutions for things that aren't problems. Like they want to fix Social Security, they want to fix Medicare, they want all sorts of things. And they want to do something about voter fraud. They want to protect us from voter fraud.
Thankfully, we moved away from this.
Will be negated out if some fraudulent person votes.
What is this, 30 years
ago?
ago?
About voter fraud, I think
Imagine
in the last
30 years
20
ago,
we've
these
done about
conversations
3
that we were
cases of
having.
it.
Crazy.
You know, I mean, it's really not a problem. It's really not a major problem of the kind that justifies all these different kinds of things. 2 picture IDs, or you've got to spell your name exactly the same on the if you got a middle initial on your driver's license but you don't have a middle initial on your voter registration card, you're disqualified. All these kinds of little tripwires that are put up there are not there to protect you from fraud. When the United Auto Workers union members in the 2000 election all took the day off, all the union members took the day off, election day, they operated, they worked, they set up carpools, they got the vote out, they were poll watchers, and they found time to vote themselves. Most workers cannot participate at that level because elections are held on a work day. You know, there's a lot of people who are disfranchised simply because the polls aren't open. I mean, they got to leave in the morning and they got an hour commute. They come back at night, and in many communities the polls close by 7 o'clock. And they can't make it.
After your job, you're going to go wait in a 3-hour line to vote?
In presidential elections, more than 1 in 5 registered voters don't vote because of long work hours, physical disabilities, parental responsibilities, familial responsibilities, lack of transportation, other things like that. Polling places are often situated in inaccessible locations, or not very readily accessible. In one Texas county, officials closed down all of but 13 polling stations. And Black and Latino voter turnout in this county plummeted. It dropped from 2,300 to 300. In parts of Mississippi, a person might have to register both at the town and county courthouses, which means round trip back and forth, about 90 miles of driving to register to vote. So, do you want people to vote or don't you? Well, that's obviously making it hard, and making it hardest for the people who don't have transportation, don't have means, don't have that kind of time, don't have that kind of mobility. There is a whole literature in political science that says that the reason low-income people don't vote is because they suffer from an underdeveloped sense of civic duty. They haven't developed a sense of civic duty or sense of civic identification, and that's what it is. If this is so true, then why are so many barriers put up to prevent them from voting? If the problem is that they just are apathetic and they don't really want to vote, then why are you pulling every trick in the book to keep them from voting, you see? In fact, in the 2000 and in the 2004 election, there were remarkable turnouts among low-income African American, poor white, Latino.
To prevent them from voting, or you also divide them along these kinds of bullshit cultural
there
lines.
Is right here in Northern California,
using social
we have something
issues.
called early voter registrars in some counties. They enable people to vote on the 2 days preceding Election Day, and this includes many people who would not otherwise have the opportunity. This includes being able to vote on Sunday.
Read
Voting
people's
should be held
faces.
over a 3-day period.
They're
including
so
1 or
excited
2
by the
weekend
Democrats
days,
and Kamala
as done in
Harris. It's
some
actually going to be
countries
unnerving,
that have witnessed
especially with this
beneficial
slow
effects of
motion.
turnout. During the 1980s, under the
This is what
presidency
America
of Ronald
describes
Reagan,
as like cult-like and
administration
brainwashed, and
officials
if it happens in
threatened
any
to
other
cut
country,
off federal aid
any other
to
country,
state and local
especially in
agencies
Asia.
that assisted in voter registration
Look at these
drives.
brainwashed cultists,
You see,
and look at
it's
these
very
people's
clear that
faces. They're
they
like enraptured.
definitely
It's like a
do not
religious
want
experience.
to
It's like
get
a
the vote
religious
out.
catharsis.
Voting right activists who tried to register people in welfare offices were arrested. In 1986, during the Reagan administration, FBI agents streamed into southern counties. They questioned all sorts of people as to whether or not you really are. They interrogated over 2,000 African Americans about whether their ballots had been fraudulently cast. They found no fraud. And isn't that interesting? FBI agents expending. What grounds then did they have to go in? If they found no fraud, what was the potential evidence or instigating evidence that made them go in there? Well, they were just ordered in by the Reagan Justice Department. You know who one of the people in the Justice Department, no, not under Reagan, under Nixon, who cut his teeth on suppressing the black vote, going up on lines and challenging voters on lines to whether or not they really can prove that they were registered and that they really are the person they say they are, and whether or not this ID they have is really legitimate. You know who was one of those people? Who's a young lawyer? Who was it? Rehnquist, that's right. You win the prize later. You got to share it with him. But that's right. It was Rehnquist who later became a Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court to preside over the Constitution and what was fair and just and good in America and all that. But you know, that has a chilling effect on voters when the FBI comes to your house and starts challenging you. And the goal is to suppress the vote. And that motivation, I would say, is essentially
John,
more
you've convinced me to
political
vote
than it
blue
is
no matter
racial.
who. This is really
In other
grim.
words, if these African Americans were voting heavily Republican, they would not have been visited by the Reagan Justice Department. And these acts of suppression would not have been happening. In 1992, a Democratic Congress passed a motor voter bill, and that was to increase voter turnout among the elderly, the poor, the infirm, by allowing citizens to register when they renewed their driver's license or applied for Social Security or unemployment benefit, welfare, or disability benefits. That when they went in for those, they could also register to vote. That bill was passed by Congress, and President Bush Sr. vetoed it. Why would an American president veto a bill, kill a bill that helped other Americans to vote? Why? Come on, where's my smart group? Because they were seen as voting the wrong way. That's right. This is a very smart class. I'm really happy. The following year, a bill was passed, and they got it through the Republican filibuster. It was brushed aside in the Senate, and it allowed for registration, but only for motor vehicle departments and one other place. Remember, military recruitment stations. Not for disability, not for Social Security, not unemployment. No, you couldn't register anybody there. That got through, and that got signed by the president. Prison inmates are denied the vote. If you're in prison, you can't vote. There are 2 states where you can be in prison and you can still vote because you still have a sovereign right. You're still a citizen of the country, and that's in Maine and Vermont. But by the way, prison inmates are counted as part of the population of the county where the prison is. So when it comes to federal funding, or when it comes to census and voter representation, those 700 prisoners in that area bring in money, federal funds, and maybe whatever the representation is, that it's more likely to get a seat in the House, in the state assembly, whatever else, because of that. This is yet another reason why there are all sorts of communities that clamor to have a prison built in their county, because that's going to increase their federal county funding and their representation, and even though none of the people in that prison will vote. States vary as to how long you go without your franchise. There's about 4.5 million people in this country who are prohibited from voting because of past criminal records or because they're currently behind bars. 10 states impose lifetime disfranchisement on anyone ever convicted of a felony. And then, of course, elections are stolen outright. I'm going to talk about 2 elections that I am absolutely sure are stolen. That's the 2000 presidential election and the 2004 presidential election.
Oh, that's interesting.
2000, I think people know.
2000 is obviously stolen. That's not even a controversy.
The hinged on how the vote went in Florida.
I'm willing to get John Kerry pilled, though, as well.
It was on TV, the election night, and somebody said, well, Florida's gone Democratic. And Bush said, oh, no, we haven't conceded Florida. We're not losing Florida. He knew something that the rest of us didn't know. Independent investigations
2000 was like, it's barely even stolen because it was right out in the open.
Mostly at ethnic minorities and low-income residents who usually voted Democratic, including 36,000 newly registered voters whose names were not added to the voter rolls. See, there was a tremendous outpouring in 2000. A lot of people came. Others turned away because they were declared, almost always incorrectly, to be convicted felons. In several Democratic precincts, state officials closed the polls early, leaving long lines of would-be voters stranded. State troopers
Not the first time Bush knew something before the rest of the U.S. found out.
Searching their cars. And you see, when people get delayed for hours, or they get delayed waiting online, they can't wait. It's not only that they get tired or they get disgusted, they just can't wait 5 hours. They got to get back to their kids or get back to their job or get back to whatever else they had to do. Some precincts required 2 photo IDs, which many citizens do not have. I don't have to do. How many people have 2 photo IDs? Raise your hand if you do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Most of the people here do not have 2 photo IDs. You two do because you're students, right? That's why. Well, then there was also a requirement in Florida. There was also a requirement passed just 2 weeks before the election that you had to have a photo ID.
I was
now, I
turned
remember
on to
going
this
in. You never
sick
had to have a photo ID.
individual,
You just
and I
signed your
found
name.
this.
Majority Report, hello. Thank you for the raid. What is up? It's me, Rob. It's nice to have
count on
you.
me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Welcome in. Bring it in here. I hope the Majority Report stream was a good one today. Once again, I appreciate the raid. Kit Say Cat, thanks for the 6 months of Tier 1. Thank you for that. How was the Majority Report stream today? And by the way, if you just came in here through this raid, smash the old follow button. You know what? It costs you nothing. There's a lot of ways that you can support the work that I do on here, which I may have to get into soon. But there's a way that you can support this program totally free of charge. And I'm not talking about a Prime sub, although that is another way that you can support this program totally free of charge. But smash the old follow button. That's all. That's all I'm asking. Is that really asking so much? I don't think so. How does it feel to know if you get injured, heaven forbid, and land in a hospital, it would cost you nothing? Honestly, it feels all right. But I think sometimes Canadians, because it's weird how our healthcare system, it becomes this kind of point of pride. But the reality is the Canadian healthcare system is being intentionally, deliberately starved and underfunded. So it's definitely good. I think it's definitely still superior with all its imperfections. But there needs to be a lot more funding going into our healthcare system to get it to that level that it should be a sort of point of pride to us. It's definitely good to be able to go to the hospital if you need to and not get saddled with a massive bill afterwards. Obviously, that's something that I continue to support. But we do have some major issues with our healthcare system that are not really getting any better anytime soon. And without a major kind of turnaround or a major investment into. It's being dismantled as we speak across the country, like the UK. Yeah, I mean, I went to the hospital the other day for some tests, some blood tests, and it took I felt okay about this, but it took about 4 hours, and that's probably on the low end of time. But to answer your question, I still do obviously appreciate that. But it's something that as much as people in Canada like to hold this up as this symbol of superiority over other systems, a lot of problems in our healthcare system being intentionally underfunded and intentionally not having enough resources being put into, not enough nurses, not enough doctors, a lot of problems, a lot of big problems with the Canadian healthcare system. I remember the first election here in Manitoba where they were asking us for photo IDs, and my mother, who had worked polls her whole life, was furious that they were implying people needed photo ID to vote instead of their voter card they got in the mail. She no longer had her driver's license and continues to bring this energy whenever we go vote. Yeah, it's amazing, this whole process, trying to make this more difficult. And I talked about as well about people trying to delegitimize mail-in voting as well, which is crazy. The idea that it's impossible to have a mail-in ballot that verifies your identity. This is not fucking hard to do. It sounds nice. I've had insurance for 20 years in America and haven't seen a doctor in 20 years. So it would cost literally any amount of money. I'm sure you probably do need to go see a doctor, though, at some point, Apprentice. I'm sure you do. It's getting to the point in the US where you can't even get an appointment with a general practitioner. So if you don't already have a provider, you're forced to rely on urgent care, which is a very low standard of care. And frankly, it's similar in Canada. It's borderline impossible to get a general practitioner or a family doctor in Canada. I don't really even know how to do it. There's waiting lists, but they can go on 5-6 years or longer. So you're relying on walk-in clinics or urgent care, which is it's still superior than paying tens of thousands of dollars for this stuff, but it's also not really a great system or something that's totally sustainable either. I forget who said it, but people mail their goddamn taxes in. I think it might have been me that said it, but that's true. Yeah, it's like we've been doing this for some time. The technology exists to mail something in and have it verify your identity. The conservatives starve the beast model where they defund public programs to increase support for privatization, which costs more. Exactly. And you look around and look at all these problems with our system. If only we had a private care system where things would be better. Like when all these problems are a direct result of underfunding. That's exactly it. And they do the same thing in healthcare and education and all these other public programs. So what we're doing today, folks, that came to this stream from the raid, we're just listening to this speech by Marco Parenti from, I guess must have been around 2005 or 6, because he's mentioning the 2004 election about, it's called Voting in the USA, How the Vote Was Won and Lost. We're listening to that. Some really interesting and kind of pertinent discussions to be had there. I would ask people, if you just showed up, if you're a long-time viewer or chatter, or if you just showed up for the first time, it's your first time on the stream, please subscribe if you can. I'm trying to make this little number at the bottom of the screen go up each and every day. So if possible, please do subscribe or gift subs. It's all very, very helpful to me. It helps keep this show on the air, and I do appreciate it a whole lot. Or if you've got, $2, $3, $5, $10, $20, whatever it is, and you want to send a tip, there's a link in the chat to send me a tip. I do this show each and every day for 3-4 hours a day, sometimes more. It's my primary source of income doing this show. So if you do enjoy this program, if you like the commentary, the analysis, or if you just tuned in and you just think I've got a good face, maybe there's some of you out there that just think I have a good face and want to give a little good face tip or sub. You can do that too. I'm not going to complain about that. I'm not going to be judgmental about it. I'll take whatever I can get. Okay. I was on it took a lot of time off this summer hanging out with my son, still trying to kind of get back on my feet here. So if you can, please do subscribe to this program. I appreciate it a lot. It helps me out a lot. And we become friends. You and I. That's right. You and I. You know who I'm talking to. We become friends when you subscribe to this program, and it's not parasocial, it's real, okay? It's a real thing. Give Rob's face the tip. Just the tip, though, okay? A lot of doctors are starting to purge their roles and charge fees. I just lost my doctor. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm starting to reach the age where I should be getting regular tests of all sorts. Last time it took me 5 years to get a doctor. Exactly. Like I don't think we're in a situation. Sure, there's a lot of things that are superior with our public health system to a system where you're going into massive debt just to get a medical issue cleared up. But we need a lot of more investment, and we need a lot more care in our public healthcare system if we want to get it to where it maybe once was or where it should be. And also, we should be having mental health care and dental care as part of our healthcare system as well. Oh, gosh. My company was bought out by United Health, an insurance
You can count on me.
company.
You're gonna have
I'm
good
now
old Rob
on
to
their
talk you
insure,
through
and a
all this.
colonoscopy cost me $1,000.
Parasocial, parapolitical, paraphonic.
GG Allen Dulles, thanks for 32 months tier 1. Very kind of you. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you for that. I'm going to continue with this speech here, but again, please do, if you can, support this program. I really appreciate it a whole lot. Anyone that can support the work that I do right here on twitch.tv.
And if it matched the signature that was there, that was good enough. That already disfranchises all sorts of people who don't have cars, who can't afford cars, elderly and others and such, who don't drive and the like. And you know about all the other story about shipping down people from Washington to intimidate the vote counters and the like, and the fact that Bush lost the popular vote, but once he got Florida, swung 500 votes, he got the presidency. Now, what happened in Florida, by the way, was happening in other places.
He didn't even win Florida.
This stuff about challenging people.
The 2000 election is insane.
Forms. I'm sorry, your name
like, it's
on the
honestly
voter
one of the
rolls
most insane events in American political history.
This is happening in other places also. This method of intimidating and suppressing the vote, we gave the example of Rehnquist during the Nixon years doing that, going around. So this kind of thing, what happened is out in Florida, there was a spotlight on it, and the race was so close, and it was so blatant, Brother Jeb was pulling out all the stops.
Right out in the
that
open.
It really came across, and actually some of it made its way into the myopic view of the media. A study by computer scientists and social scientists estimated that in the 2000 election, there was about 4 to 6 million votes left uncounted. That it would have been not just a 2 million victory for Gore, it would have been substantially more. Now, maybe not all of those 2 to 4 million votes were Democratic votes, but the majority probably were. The 2004 election.
I'm interested in getting 2004 election pilled.
People voted in 2000. In 2004,
2004 was like
turnout
the first,
climbed to
really the first. Oh shit! Sorry.
million.
Really, the
So
first
that's 17
U.S. election that I was really, really like interested in and followed very closely, invested in. 2000, I was still a little bit young, still not really politically aware. But after September 11th and Iraq and Afghanistan and George W. Bush, I'd become very kind of like interested in following that. 2004 was really the first U.S. election that I really heavily followed. And I remember thinking, it's so certain, like, how could Bush win? Like, obviously Bush will not win this election. Like, it's just unthinkable. It's George W. Bush, Iraq, and like, it's just a fucking obvious disaster, So clearly he's not going to win. And it was my first taste of being bitterly disappointed by becoming invested in an American political election. And it would not be my last, actually. It would really not be my last. My daddy's friends on SCOTUS say I'm president. Yeah, of course. Very democratic system you got going on there. Anyway, I am very interested in getting 2004 election theft pilled by Parenti here.
million new voters. It was rather extraordinary. The climb really went from about 50% of the electorate to about 65% of the electorate. It's one of the highest we've ever had in a presidential election. 2004, if you remember it way back, it was a remarkable development. The Democratic Party went into that election more unified than it had ever been since 1964, I would say. In 2004, not only was the Democratic Party there, and not only were people ready to vote for a candidate nobody particularly liked. I mean, how do you warm up to John Kerry? I mean, for Christ's sake. But it was really such a strong anti-Bush vote. But not only that, but the Republican Party was splintered in a way I had never seen before. You had...
The first election was Harper's. That's his own brand of fuck elections.
Policy wonks, policy makers, some high-level people from the Nixon and Reagan and Bush senior administrations, disaffecting, breaking.
Yeah, the one where Harper won a huge majority with like 30% of the vote. That was also very frustrating and bitterly disappointing.
And saying, this country's on the wrong course, we're not going in the right direction. You had former military generals, the military brass. I mean, once these guys were out and got their pensions, then they could speak up. And they spoke, signing these statements about, we do not have confidence in this present administration. All sorts of kinds of people were coming around. In addition, the 2 million progressives who had voted for Ralph Nader in 2000 switched to Kerry in 2004. I voted for Nader in 2000 because Gore was taking California by 8 percentage points. I figured it was okay to vote for Nader. If it had gotten any closer, I would have voted for Gore.
It cost the Dems the election, voted for Nader.
Democracy Now!
This guy's canceled.
Ralph Nader
Cancel this guy.
That he was going to run for 2004, and Amy Goodman said to me, "What do you think of that?" It was breaking the top story, and I was then interviewed. I said, "Well, I think Ralph Nader is a great American. I think he would lend a dimension of issues
an arena-sized
that wouldn't be there
Ellen
otherwise.
show.
He would move the center of political gravity a little further over to the left and all that, but I'm not going to vote for him because I believe the situation is so grave that we have to get Mr. Bush out, so I'm going to vote for Kerry." And that's what other people did.
Yeah,
so
there's Sean
to achieve
Astin.
his remarkable tally, Bush
Samwise
Jr.
Gamgee.
Bush Jr. got 62 million votes, they say.
Oh, Sam.
In other words, he got almost 12 million more votes than he got in 2000. How the hell did that happen? Meanwhile, Kerry showed only 8 million more votes than Gore received in 2000. Let me give you another statistic that's very telling. Pre-election surveys indicated that there was 16.8 million, I said 17 million, but 16.8 million new voters. Among these voters, Kerry was a heavy favorite. Overwhelmingly among the new voters were going for Kerry. That, by the way, was one of the most hidden, undisclosed, and buried datum. That was a datum that the media didn't tell anybody. They somehow never saw that one. And all the dispute that came after it, nobody ever mentioned the fact that that in fact Kerry was the favorite among the new voters. So for Bush to have achieved this growth, he would have had to keep all of his 50 million from 2000, plus a majority of the new voters, plus a large share of the very liberal Nader defectors. Nothing in the campaign, nothing in the opinion polls suggested such a mass crossover. The numbers simply do not add up. In key states like Ohio, the Democrats achieved immense
How do you feel about the math
success
on this?
at registering new voters, outdoing the Republicans by as much
Remember
as
the
5
exit
to
polls
1.
as well.
The
Remember the
Democratic
Kerry
Party,
exit
again,
polls?
also was
The exit
on
polls told us a story about what was going to go on in that election that wound up being false. And again, when that shit happens in a Latin American country, that's clear evidence of fraud. I remember there was big election day exit polls that indicated a big Kerry win that turned out to be not true. Those Bernie exit polls as well. There's something kind of fishy going on with this country. Sometimes I don't think it's that democratic. Call me crazy. Call me a conspiracy theorist. Call me crazy. Call me a conspiracy theorist. Sometimes I don't think this is much of a democracy you got going on there in the United States of America.
Unusually united in Ohio. All through Election Day of 2004, exit polls showed John Kerry was ahead by 53 to 47%, and that he would win a solid victory in the vote and the Electoral College.
There it is.
I want to tell you something else that's sort of interesting. Before the election, several Republican lights had announced their intention to suppress the Democratic vote. Interview, U.S. News and World Report, Pennsylvania House Speaker John Purcell, Republican, observed that Kerry would need a huge number of votes in Philadelphia to carry the state. Quote, "It's important for me to keep that number down." What a way to talk. You are a political representative in a democracy, and you talk about keeping that number down. Representative John Papageorge, a Republican of Michigan, quoted in the Detroit Free Press, "If we do not suppress the Detroit vote," look at the verbs that are being used, suppress the Detroit vote, "we're going to have a tough time."
Stick to Canada, also not a democracy.
In Nevada, former executive director of the state GOP, Dan Burdish, tells the press, "I'm looking to take Democrats off the voter rolls." So those are some of the ways this victory was achieved by Georgie Jr. So Florida, what was going to be the next Florida? I'll tell you who was the next Florida. Florida and Ohio and New Mexico and Nevada and about 1 or 2 other states. Every one of the swing states, of the 11 swing states, there were these efforts being made to suppress the vote. Not always successful. Absentee ballots, sometimes absentee ballots were mailed out to voters on the day before Election Day, too late to be returned on time, or they were never mailed at all. Again, voter Democratic registration forms disappeared. Overseas ballots, very interesting stories there. The overseas ballots are traditionally handled by the State Department, as most other things. When you go travel overseas, you go to the U.S. Embassy, you're dealing with the U.S. State Department, as it should be. In 2004, for some reason, the Pentagon became the distributor of overseas ballots. What's the Pentagon doing in the business of elections? Nearly half of the 6 million American voters living abroad, a noticeable number of whom had formed, by the way, anti-Bush organizations, never received their ballots or got them too late. Military personnel, usually more inclined towards supporting the president, encountered no such problems or difficulties like that. I had a gentleman write to me, a man by the name of Stephen Gaves, who lives in Stockholm. He's an American. And he got my article on this. By the way, if you want, you can go visit my website, and I've got a piece on stolen elections, which has some of this data and other things too. But he said he was part of, I think it was called, they had an organization like Democrats Abroad or something. And he eagerly looked forward to getting his, ballot, and when it came, it was a military ballot. And he knew he couldn't vote, because he could not perjure himself. He said, "What unit did you serve in?" And this, and he had never been in the military, and he wrote back, and he never heard from them and all that. So he got disgusted. He said, "I'm never going to apply for another ballot." This is another thing that happens, that when you suppress votes and you thwart voters and you discourage and frustrate them, they often then do not come back and vote again. They start to get discouraged. And then, of course, there were tens of thousands of Democratic voters were stricken from the rolls as convicted felons. That thing I mentioned before. That happened not just in Florida, but was happening all over the place. And there were all sorts of other subterfuges that were going on. Election officials in Minnesota, in some areas, denied registration forms to anti-Bush canvassers who wanted to go door to door in Democratic precincts to get out the vote. Voter Outreach of America, it's a company funded by the Republican National Committee, collected thousands of voter registration forms in Nevada, promised to turn them into public officials, and then systematically destroyed the ones belonging to Democrats. Registration books in Democratic precincts were frequently out of date or incomplete. In states like Ohio, the number of precincts that were favorable to Democrats were reduced drastically, like 13-3 or something. Now, when that happens, then
And really
you're gonna
compare
have
some of this
fewer
stuff
voting
with like
polls
Trump's
and
constant
longer
whining
lines.
about
Anyway,
lack of democracy and voter fraud and all this shit. Like, it's just Trump's and conservatives, really their whole argument about like stolen elections is just like too many people voted because their ideas and their personalities are so deeply unpopular. They're like, too many people are voting. What's wrong here? And then when you actually point to the other side, the way the disenfranchisement actually takes place and the way voter fraud actually takes place, all favors the right, heavily favors the right. WD Gaster, thanks for the 666. That's the devil number. Ooh, the devil number. Ooh. Thank you very much for the tip. I really appreciate that. And once again, getting towards the end of the stream shortly, folks. Halfway to the goal. If anyone else wants to support this program, help me make that little number at the bottom of the screen go up. Halfway there, if you can, please do subscribe to this program. Help me make the number go up. Help me keep this show on the air. Help support the community and the work that I do right here on twitch.tv by subscribing. Or you can gift subs. If you gift 5 subs and above, you instantly become an elite tier member of the Friendship Triangle system. That's Twitch's only 2-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down cloud tiered reward system.
you know about all these mishaps. Let me just say one thing about the touchscreens. After all of these kinds of suppressions, there still were enough, millions surplus, to win the election for Kerry. But then you got to the touchscreens, and in every anomaly with touchscreens, they talk about glitches, things aren't right, we still got some wrinkles
the
to
cloud
work
is
out.
worth it.
These
That's
aren't
exactly
glitches. When the glitch keeps going only in one direction, for the benefit of one candidate and against another candidate, that's not a glitch. Let me give you just one example, like a whole bunch of things here, but it is going too long. In New Mexico, every county that had
Trump's whole argument about
lost.
like stolen
Every
elections is
county
just
that
like
had
mail-in voting.
regardless of the ethnic
Mail-in
makeup of the
voting.
county,
Too many
the
people
income
voted.
level in the
It's
county,
not allowed.
or the past voting behavior. There were also some remarkable cases where Bush suddenly, he surged up and reversed and won a county that had never gone Republican in his life, and he won it by 68% or something like that. These incredible anomalies. The only thing that correlated with Kerry's defeat in these counties was the existence of these touchscreens.
I will say though,
so
despite all this stuff about the 2004 election and all these kind of statistics and numbers and stuff, I do think the Occam's razor solution to that is that Bush just won the election because America is a nation of hogs. I'm sorry to say it. Not you personally, not you in the chat, not you in the community, but I do think it's entirely believable that Bush just legitimately did win that election because it's like, we're at war, is the president, shooting voting stations and stuff. I think that's totally legitimate, even though I'm interested in hearing some of these statistics.
Strong reason to believe that these things were operating dishonestly. So there it is, in some. And you know the whole story on touchscreens, I won't go into them. They're secret, there's no paper trail, blah, blah, and all that sort of stuff. So these are very real issues. Let me end by just talking about 2006. So what happened in 2006? How is it that the Democrats won? Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, they should have won by massively more. They should have had about a 60-seat majority. What happened in 2006 is you had what's called a base election, just like the one before it. A base election is when you assume the two voting constituencies are very fiercely divided. In other words, you're not going to make too many converts from the other camp over to your side. So how are you going to win the election? You're going to win the election by getting out your base, by concentrating on getting your people to the polls, encouraging them, this and that and the other thing, getting as many people out as you can. The Republicans, in 2006, Republicans were so concentrating on trying to suppress the Democratic base that they forgot their own base. What happened is the Democrats didn't win that election, the Republicans lost it. They lost about 30% of their vote. I mean, it's really a remarkable disaffection. About 30% of the people who had voted Republican in 2004 either stayed home or switched to the Democratic Party or some other party, Libertarian or something else, in 2006. You lose 30% of your vote and you only lose the House by 20 seats and you still practically still have a control on the Senate or a lock. Well, I mean, I think there's evidence that there still was theft. They lost in an area where they forgot to steal from. They just assumed they had these seats. These were pretty good seats and they had them. Also, I think they're getting nervous. I think our struggle and agitation and raising questions about touchscreens and raising questions about suppression of the vote and such, I think that's been getting registering. I think Blackwell in Ohio, here's a case, the guy is running for governor. Here's a guy, he's African American, he was a Democrat. He switched to the Republican Party and he became Secretary of State. He stole the election in 2004. He suppressed, he pulled every trick in Ohio that you can. Ohio had very few touchscreen machines. It wasn't touchscreens, it was all the other things I was talking about. Suppression of the vote, losing ballot boxes, keeping people on 9-hour lines and all that sort of thing. That's what Blackwell did in 2000. 2004, he's running for governor and he's still Secretary of State and he's still presiding over the election. I said, boy, you got the fox watching the chickens here, okay. But there was a real spotlight on this guy. You know, he had taken some heat. These reports that had come out, the Conyers report and the like, they got worried. He would be saying, well, what if I could steal Ohio again, but what if the Democrats win the Congress, and then what if they investigate me? And all sorts of people have been going to jail lately. So I think
what if we just allow Democrats to win, but have them become Republicans? Then it solves the problem.
And that's what they were a little too nervous to steal.
We don't have to steal any elections anymore if Democrats simply become Republicans and they adopt all these Republican policies on the border and imperialism and law and order, but just wrap it in this kind of like woke joy, good vibe. What if we just do that? Then we don't have to steal any more elections. I think that's what they ended up going with. They, the ruling class.
Paul Rove didn't get it all that right this time, but there were some things that happened, and I think there are many more seats they could have won, which they didn't win, and then there were some outrageous ones like Florida 13, which is still 18,000 votes where nobody voted for Congress. Suddenly they voted for dog catcher and judge and all the other things, but nobody voted for Congress, so the vote was wiped out, and the Republican was given the seat. So
that's been the project of conservatives like Jennifer Rubin for a long, long time.
Yeah,
and now you see them becoming like prominent voices that are supported by liberals. You have fucking George W. Bush being embraced by liberals. Well, that's the ultimate example. That's the thing I always go back to with like the 2000 election and Nader and all these liberals that still to this day hate Ralph Nader and everyone that voted for Nader because of George W. Bush. And then you ask them about George W. Bush and they're like, oh, that guy is great. He's great. Well, I wish we had guys like that anymore. I wish we had conservatives like that. I wish we could go back to the days when we had conservatives like that. They literally like George W. Bush more than they like Ralph Nader. That's liberals now.
Thing. The voting system in this country is a disgrace. It's a mess. It's 50 different systems of 50 different states. It's more than that. It then varies by county and county as to standards and what happens and what doesn't happen and the like. And there's a lot of thievery. It's a lot of it is not policed. A lot of it is you've got to trust people. Well, why the hell should we have to trust them with our vote and our vote count? So that's what voting is about. Voting is about the struggle. It's very much a part of the struggle for democracy itself. Thank you.
That was the conclusion.
There we go. That was Michael Parenti. So it was kind of interesting. That was a more recent Parenti thing that we're kind of used to hearing. Obviously, he's talking about 2006 and 2004, but I think kind of interesting in this moment to reevaluate some of this stuff and to talk about the ways that the American electoral process is just fundamentally undemocratic. And yeah, we can talk about the election theft in 2000, which again is not even controversial. Like the 2000 election was like, can you even describe it as being stolen? The 2000 election, it wasn't even stolen. It was just right out in the open. They were like, yeah, we're doing this instead. Like it's barely even theft. And there's plenty of stuff you could point to 2004. I'll leave it up to people to decide whether they think that was like, an actual case of theft or fraud, or if it's just a matter of America being a deeply reactionary country that voted for the guy that was in charge when they were in the process of engaging in this horrific war in Iraq. I think either of those things are pretty plausible. But I think there's something really interesting about that idea as well. Like the more that the differences between these two parties has been completely flattened, the less we hear about this, the less we think about this process of like Democrats or liberals being disenfranchised or having their vote tallies fucked with, or having this kind of stuff take place, because now it's like now you've got two flavors of Republican. Now you've got slightly different flavors. And there are definite differences, but like in the ways that the U.S. ruling class needs them to be the same, they're the same. And the more that's happened, the less I think like you have this process of Democrats and liberals having their being disenfranchised in that way. I think there's something interesting about that. Why do we have to make this stupid ritual such a hassle and we don't have to as nuts? Well, it makes a lot of money because then you project it around the world as entertainment. Why have just a simple process where you have a 6-week publicly funded campaign and it making voting easy when you can turn it into a gigantic like 9-month circus sideshow? In a way, it just never even stops. The sideshow just never even stops. It just goes on and on and on. Because it's big business. Big business. It's great for cable news. It's great for everybody. Everyone profits from it, Kerry learned his lesson and went on to rig the Afghan elections. That's right. Yeah. He took what he learned from his own experience. And that's really like what you should be asking from every public servant, right? I was going to say 9 months sounds much shorter than what we actually get. Yeah, if only it was just 9 months. If only it was only 9 months. Report just had my first can of sardines. They're okay. Prefer kipper snacks, though. Tinned fish is something we all need to be looking for, I think. Tinned fish. Join the tinned fish movement, where it's sardines or whatever it is. It's a nice little snack. Quite healthy as well. Got any good cats? I hate that PP is trying to turn Canada's election cycle into a US-style one. Yeah, that's what this country needs. That's true, PM True. We should be crucifying him over that. Figuratively. Not literally, of course. Good news or cute cats? That's a great question. Here, I always appreciate these guys if you're looking for hopium. If you're looking for hopium, I always appreciate these little fellas. How about this for you?
よく聞かれるんですけど、みかん食べないんですかとか、柚子食べてる時も食べないんですかって聞かれます。この子たちはですね、実は柑橘系のフルーツあんまり好きじゃないんです。なので、よっぽどお腹空いてない限りはかじらないですね。この子たちからしたらちょっとボールみたいなプカプカなんか浮くなっていう感じで。子供たちとかは結構ねボールみたいにねしてじゃれ合って遊ぶ。
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thanks, Kijiji. Thanks for the gifted sub. Very much appreciated.
高いところになるともうねちびちゃんたち足がつきません。移動手段はね泳ぎますので泳ぐ瞬間なんかもとても
Oh, to be a capybara in a yuzu bath.
見てみてください。さあ気持ちよさそうにねスイスイ泳いでくれてますね。ただお客様の方全然向いてませんね。ごめんなさいね。
Look at that little guy. He doesn't have to pay taxes. He doesn't have to go to a job. He doesn't have to make any little number go up.
おならしてるの分かります？ブクブクしたんです。このようにちょっとね可愛い瞬間よく見てないと見逃します。そしてですね、この子たちの前足見てもらうと分かります。小さな指の間に水かきがついてます。一生懸命ね、今ここら辺の子たち足がつかないので前足をね一生懸命いいですね、ちょっと写真撮ってください。今しか見れませんよ。
Oh, he's going on his head. Look at that guy. This is his job, similar to Rob, wallowing in citrus in his own filth for the entertainment of the crowd. Well, I guess so. It's on his head. Oh. I like this guy. He's got a little like hairstyle. This guy's kind of got the zoomer hair. I wish I was a capybara in a citrus bath as well. And if I do get one day to 1K subs, and I'm able to sustain that, maybe you'll even get to see me in a citrus bath. And I'll even put a little fucking orange on my head for your entertainment and enjoyment and amusement.
まずですね、真っ先に入ってきてくれた、今お湯が出ているところ、一番前に陣取っているの。
And it's only
カピバラファミリー大黒柱。
479 subs to get there.
カモ君はですね、一番お風呂歴が長いので、
Only 479 subs to get there. Barely anything at all.
ですのでね、あの位置がですね、ガンボ君の特等席になります。ですけれどもね、ガンボ君実は暑がりになります。ですのでね、すぐに体が温まってあの位置を他の子に譲ってくれます。またガンボ君はですね、お父さんなんですけどもちょっと甘えん坊な性格をしています。我々飼育員がですね、展示場、こちらなんかお掃除に入りますとですね、いつも真っ先に遊んでと、おやつちょうだいと寄ってくる甘えん坊な一面も持っています。はい、そしてですね、ごくごくとお風呂を飲んでいますね。はい、そしてそんなガンボ君のお隣、こちらがですね、
Is anyone feeling better about anything?
白玉ちゃんはですね、普段のんびりした性格をしている女の子なんですけれども、非常に暖かいところが好きでですね、太陽なんかが出ていますと、日向ぼっこをしてゴロンゴロンしています。
Folks, I do have to get going soon. I'm going to try and do these streams a little bit longer. Gonna have to kind of get back into that, into the swing of things. I do have a little bit of pain going on as well, so I'm going to go rest up pretty soon. I got some other things to do around the house. I got to do the dishes and do some other stuff. But I'm halfway to the sub goal, folks. I'm halfway to the sub goal. So does anyone else want to support this program? Do you want to support this program and help keep this show on the air? A couple of generous chatters could do it. We got a lot of single generous chatters. A couple of very generous sub gifters could get us there very, very quickly. In theory, and remember, if you do like this show, if you like tuning into this program, the only way that this show exists is if people subscribe and support the work that I do and help me make the little number at the bottom of the screen go up. It's the only way. It's the only way that this show can stay on the air. So if there's any more brave heroes out there, any brave, heroic batch sub gifters, please subscribe if you can. Help support the work that I do on here. Help support this community. Join the community. Get the emotes, all the tiny little images, some of the very best tiny images on this platform.
こちらの子ですね、スウェットの、ボタンちゃんになりますね。ボタンちゃん非常に、元気いっぱいな女の子になります。常にですね、飼育員さんに、近寄ってくる、そんな感じの元気いっぱいな女の子。はい、そしてですね、ちょうどですね、ちょっと端っこの方で、皆さんの方をじーっと見て、ちょっと離れた感じで。
So far, the calls to action have not been super successful. I imagine the pipes are just getting clogged again.
実はですね、ちょっと
Those dang pipes. The internet tubes getting clogged again with all the people rushing to support this show. Hello, Ali. How's it going?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Venus, very much for the gifted sub. I appreciate that, Venus. Thank you. Venus of lore.
その時の天候や温度によって変えるんですけれども、だいたい37度から41度前後、そのぐらいの設定をしております。これがですね、ちょうどいい温度だと動かなくなるんですけれども、ぬるくなってきますとね、彼とはですね、もう完全にプールと勘違い、バシャバシャ遊びに来ています。
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Riskinverse, thanks for gifting a sub as well. I really appreciate all the support, as usual. Riskinverse, thank you. Here's PM Trio's link. I have no idea what this is.
Why would you lift your face above the water? McLovin does not like the bathtub.
She doesn't seem to totally hate it.
McLovin!
Pretty good. Why are you doing this to me? I don't know. She doesn't seem to hate it, though. She doesn't seem to totally hate it. Anyway, I am going to come back tomorrow, folks, and there's plenty of stuff to talk about. There's plenty of stuff to talk about tomorrow. It was nice. Today was fun. Today was a good stream. I'm happy to be back. I am happy to be getting back into kind of the swing of things. Going to be doing this show at a little bit more of a regular clip now that the summer's over. They need to stop making news for a couple of weeks so we can catch up. There's too much news. There's just too much news going on right now. They got to stop. They got to stop this news machine. We reported the news. Ali in HD, I think, still looking for a gift sub. If there's another brave hero out there. We reported the news. He's so fucking satisfied with himself in that scene.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all
and
this.
Lodane is forced to do the gift sub. This is where we're at now, folks. This is where we're at, chat. You are a hero, Lodane. Well, I won't say a hero. Because what's a hero? But she's the man for her time and place. She fits right in there. Lodane is the real MVP. Many people are saying this. Just watched The Big Lebowski last night. Just never gets old. It just never gets old, does it? Not for me, anyways. Okay. Thank you to everyone for supporting this program. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for hanging out. I'll be back tomorrow. and should be more or less on a regular schedule again for the foreseeable future. So we'll be back tomorrow on my quest to make the little number go up. We'll resume. It will resume tomorrow. I hope everyone has a nice evening. And that's all. I'm a little sleepy. Bit of an eepy guy over here.